in another week. Thank you so much. Amen.
All right, so I will now call to order the special meeting of July 25th, 2023. Welcome, citizens of Clay County. I want to take this opportunity to thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to attend this school board meeting. This meeting is our opportunity as your elected representatives to collaborate openly and make decisions that will decide the future direction of our public schools and the education of our children here in Clay County. If you wish to address the board on an agenda item, there will be an opportunity to speak for 3 minutes. Please fill out a card, which you'll find located, where do we have our cards?
Here on the back table.
On the back table. Okay, the back of the room, and promptly hand it in to one of our officers. If you have items that you would like to present to the school board or superintendent, please hand them to an officer who will distribute them accordingly. Your participation is always welcomed and appreciated. So our first item is the 2023-2024 Mental Health Assistance Allocation Plan.
Madam Chair, if I could, just as a point of order, is it possible for us to say the pledge each time before
absolutely.
that? I've noticed that that's not part of our workshop routine, and I thought it appropriate, so if we all could please rise. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I like that idea.
So the first, thank you, Ms. Bowler. Okay, there we go. So the first item, mental health assistance plan, just a brief explanation to the board, and the reason why this comes at this time every year. The mental health assistance plan cannot be formulated until the governor signs the budget. And in addition, they usually give their template out on June 30th, but expect it to be done by August 1st. So yes, this is a state-run operation. So they give a very small amount of time. We had already had the July meeting, so this is the next available meeting in order to get that in. Just a couple of reminders of what it is. You know that mental health has become a big focus within schools. Within our state and the nation, we're required to provide Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 interventions related to mental health of students. We do that through Suite 360, solution-focused therapy, as well as our Brave 3 referrals. So on the actual board agenda, the big book, the next meeting, you'll see 2 items. One of those items is Suite 360. One of those is Brave referrals. So we have about 1,500 referrals for mental health in our district. I think that number should be shocking to most people related to that. Trying to provide those services to students is a huge task involved because there aren't as many providers as there are need related to this particular topic. So with that in mind, I'll answer any questions or bring it to a vote of the board in this special meeting.
Any questions from the board? All right, at this time, I'll entertain a motion.
I move approval.
A motion from Ms. Bulla. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Ms. Clark. Any discussion?
I just want to know, do we send out notices to parents about what at that grade level their kids will be seeing ahead of time?
Yes, if it's a Tier 2 intervention, it would require parent permission, parent signs.
What about the videos when we show them?
We coordinate with the schools to have a schedule to show them. So remember, the videos are part of state statute related to substance abuse, trafficking, human trafficking.
Well, I just meant like one time when I was showing the video, it was about suicide prevention. And one of my students had tried to commit suicide, and the mom didn't know we were showing it. And so I was wondering if there was a way, I don't know if like an open house or something, we can hand out a form saying during what week we are showing what video. It's not that, I like the choices we've made.
Right.
I'm just thinking at some time they might want to know if they don't want their child to see the video.
Sure, and I know that folks that had any sort of reservation, and I know that Ms. Fogarty has an open door and has met with several parents that are concerned related to any topic like that. The state puts forth a statute requiring us to do this. Suite 360 is the method by which we achieve the state directive, state statute, and move forward there. The need from our students is far greater than we can provide, which is why we use a third-party vendor, such as Project Brave, in order to achieve greater coverage for our students. So,
Mr. Russell, you said there's a schedule of the videos that's put out to the schools. Did I understand you say that?
yeah, we require the schools to tell us when they're going to do it,
Okay.
related to it, to ensure that it gets done. in
We already have
compliance.
that document. It'd be easy, I think, to share
Yeah.
with parents.
Yeah, we can certainly send something out in the newsletter when that's coming out.
I know as a parent, even if it's a video that I wouldn't have a problem with my child seeing, I'd want to know that they saw it so we could have a talk about it at home.
We can certainly do that.
Especially the sex trafficking, we need to have videos about that. It's important for kids to be able to protect themselves and others and know how to react. And I do think, to Ms. Gilhelden's point, that parents may want to have more conversation about that.
Okay.
I'm assuming that we already let parents know when those videos are being performed or
Usually
being
we go
shown.
out and
And the other, it's sort of like 50% of the parents will read about it and understand it and talk to their children about it and maybe pull, and unfortunately, there's always going to be that 50% who don't see it or who say they don't see it, and it's been pushed.
To the point, we should advertise more and we'll
We
advertise.
get as much as we can.
Yeah.
Yep.
We get who we can.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. All right, our next item is to update an amended 2023-2024 school safety interlocal agreement.
Yes, ma'am. So what this item does is it corrects an error in the last time the board has approved this item, in which the numbers of 155 and 216 on the contract were transposed. They were there, but they were in the wrong spot. This corrects that item to bring it forward.
I have a question. Did we ask Clay County if CCSO about this contract? Or did we just renew it?
The board has renewed the contract. What's in front of you is the amendment to it to change that.
Right. But I just want to know, did we ask Clay County
We
to
would not,
take operations or at all
We-
before?
we would not ask Clay County to do that. It would be improper to do so.
Okay. I'm talking about before the amended one.
No,
Okay.
no, because we've already approved the contract.
Okay.
We're now-
Well, I'm talking about before we approved it. That's what I wanted to know.
No.
That's what I was, okay.
Do I have a motion?
I move approval.
A motion from Ms. Fuller. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Ms. Clark. All in, any discussion? Sorry. Okay, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Next item is to approve the contract for legal services between the School Board of Clay County, Florida and the Douglas Law Firm.
As you know, the school board had put out bid for legal services for school board attorney. Through the interview process, they chose the Douglas firm. I will note that we have Charlie Douglas, the owner of the firm, in the audience out here for the board. The contract's pretty self-explanatory. It's pretty straightforward, the contract itself, and so, as asked, I'm bringing it to the board for a vote.
Okay. We'll take a motion and a second and then discussion if there is any. Do I have a motion?
I'll move.
A motion from Ms. Hanson. Do I have a second?
I'll second approval.
Second from Ms. Bola. Any discussion? All right. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. All right, next item. We're going to review the 2023-2024 tentative budget for all funds, and Dr. Lepetko will be presenting on that.
All right, Doc, you're up.
Hey, at what point do we get to start utilizing our new lawyer?
Office 2, first page, next page. In the contract.
All right, good morning.
Good
Good morning.
Are you all ready for the most exciting presentation ever? Maybe the next 4 hours. So I hope you have your coffee, Coke, or whatever it is that you need to keep alert, okay? Because this is very, very exciting. All right. All right. As a,
Go back one more.
yeah. Just so we know who our board members are, I'd like to introduce them to you. So, there you go. Now go to the next one.
As you wish.
Thank you. All right. I wanted to start off this meeting for what is the purpose of this meeting. The purpose of this particular meeting is to obtain board's approval to advertise the 3 ads that you will see in this presentation. However, as we go through this, there are other factors that impact those ads. So we'll be going through all of those different areas that created the ad that will be in the newspaper this upcoming Thursday. So with that being said, part of it is a process. It is really to determine what is our budget for the upcoming year. We've already started. July 1 starts our budget year. However, it takes time, effort, and a lot of planning to get through just the beginning of a budget season. I wanted to show you that, you know, it is a continuous cycle. It's not something that's done just within a month and then it stops. It's not something that's put on the shelf. It is something that's continually going on. We start planning in January for the January of the prior year. So January of 23, we plan for July of 23 to go into June through June of 24. So, you know, we plan for it. During that time, we're waiting for our legislature to make their beautiful, wonderful decisions to tell us what sort of funding we will receive at the end of, for that fiscal year. We prepare, we guess. It's a guessing game. It's always a guessing game because we don't know what to expect from the legislature. So with that being said, we're always preparing, we're always changing. Numbers change constantly throughout the year. It's a, what shall I say? It's a crystal ball. I am constantly looking at that ball, that crystal ball to say, okay, how much dollars are we really going to get? Are we going to receive the funding that we've all projected, what we expect to receive? So it's very stressful, I will tell you all that right now, to not know what we will receive. We are at the part where we're getting ready to adopt that budget for this fiscal year, the new year. We will have another, 2 more meetings to finalize this budget. It won't be finalized till September of this year. Of course, we'll be already in school, right? So again, it's still a guessing game. We are constantly reporting. The Budget and Finance Office is always constantly completing reports. As with the other departments, they're also doing a lot of academic reporting, all those types of things. However, the Finance Office is always constantly under scrutiny to submit reports. Audits, we are constantly under audit review, constant. Our AFR, Annual Financial Report, is under audit right now. The auditors are about to visit us to look at last year's activities. So it's a constant review of our data, constantly. Of course, we're always monitoring what we're doing in the finance office. Is actually looking at the revenues. Are we making our projections? Are we close to it? Do I need to talk with the superintendent and say we need cuts? You know, where are you going to cut? What programs are we going to cut to make sure that we are solid at the end of the fiscal year? And of course, it starts back again for that fiscal year. So it's a constant circle of always monitoring this entire budget. So with all that said, I wanted to show you, give you an idea of what that process looks like. As I said, it starts in January, where we start looking at our positions, and that really is driven by our projections. Our projections are our student enrollment. That is the basis of this entire budget. how many students are we going to receive in the district that will support the operation of our students? You know, how are we going to provide the instructional support for our kids? So it starts in January. We're looking at FTE projections. Again, there's that crystal ball. We're looking at to see how many kids are we going to get into our system. Will we receive enough to cover our budget that we had previously? And are we going to get any extra dollars based on increased enrollment? Typically that has been great, but again, this year, actually last year, with the additional, or the changes to the scholarship program for a statewide, that has hurt us significantly. We lost a lot of students that went to the scholarship program. Therefore, what I projected in July of last year was not sufficient enough to cover everything as we ended June 30th because of, again, the scholarship program. A lot of students exited and took the scholarship. So again, January 17th to the 23rd, we had allocation and FTE discussions. And of course, then we also, once we know, we have some idea of what our allocations are going to be, what our projections are going to be, we start with our budget planning. It's very hard to start in January to plan for a budget that you really don't know. Think about it. This year, when did the legislature actually release or finish the session? That was in March? No, May?
Yeah.
The end of May. They did not release the budget. That's the last thing that they do. They did not release the budget numbers until late May. And I've got to build a budget, and our budget is over $500 million. I've got to build a budget and have ready for approval and go through what we call the TRIM process, T-R-I-M, Truth and Millage. Part of this process is going through TRIM, which really is a process, and I know I'm jumping all over the place because there's so many things that go into this budget that I wanted everyone to know about. Because again, this is a wonderful document. You have the book in front of you, but it's a lot of details that went into it, and love, and stress, I'll tell you that. And long nights. So anyway, this is our budget process, the calendar. You do have it in your handout, and if you'd like, you can go ahead and go through it. But the key to this is the dates that are very, very important. Is August 1st, which is going to be our next budget meeting. It is actually for you, the board, to adopt the tentative budget and approve the millages. So August 1st is our next meeting, and then the next meeting that's really critical is September 7th, which is hearing to adopt our final budget, not final, I shouldn't say final, our budget and the final millages that will be set in the county. So, okay, and then of course in between we're submitting reports to the state. Because a lot of this information does go to the state and it is reviewed. And like I said, it is also audited as well. It's funny, the auditors are going to be here. They are here to start looking at our annual financial report, which is really what we've spent, how we've spent it, did we spend the funds in an appropriate way based on the state's guidelines. And in addition to that, they're going to look at my budget. The budget that was created a whole year ago, and the year is gone. But they're going to look at it to make sure that I have appropriated the funds in the manner that the state has directed us to. So with that being said,
Dr. Wadaka?
Yes.
I had thought our hearing to adopt was September 14th, the week after our regular board meeting.
no, the TRIM calendar has that date. Is it? Do you have the calendar?
September 14th.
Oh, it is? Oh, my
Final public
apologies.
hearing
Then I
and
will
adoption of final
update that.
millage.
I will update that. Because I think September 7th, is there a date?
That's the final
That's a
meeting to
regular.
approve and transmit the annual financial report, including the program cost report.
Oh, okay.
And the due date is September 11th, so just before the 11th.
Okay, all right. Yes, typically we try to do both both reports at the same time, but I guess this year's an unusual year, it's a week later, so thank you, Bonnie, I apologize for that, I will correct that, but it is, it will be in the next presentation where it will have the correct date of when we're actually going to adopt the final budget, so. And, okay, so, let's move on. All right, this is just a pictorial view of our historical millage the last 20 years. And what's important with this slide that I'd really like to emphasize is the fact that you can see that our millages are continually going down. From, when you look at the previous years, say for instance 2012, our millage was 5.323. Now it's down to 3.156. However, the values is actually going up. You can see it went from $9.5 billion to this year, $19 billion is our property value. What's unique about this year too is the fact that every year the state local tax assessment office sends me a notice and lets me know what our value will be for this year. So I use that number to determine, okay, what is going to be our millage? What does that look like for this year compared to last year? So that is the value that I look at. Well, I will tell you, typically, you can see the changes in each year. It's about $1 billion, right? $1 billion. Late June. No, actually, I think it was June 30th or just around there, I received a second notice from the tax collector's office, tax assessment office. And it went from about 16.8 billion to 19.1. A huge increase. What that means is that our property values have significantly increased this year, which is unheard of. It was just, again, going back, I'm thinking of everything's done, everything is well, we're finished, we're there, and I had to go back and recalculate all of this stuff. So, yeah, again, the love is there. So that's the importance of this slide. All right, I'm going to try and speed this up because I know I have like 75 slides.
Doc,
Yeah.
so we would be correct in saying that we actually reduced the rate of taxation,
Yes,
but it's gone up because the value of the property has gone up.
right,
So,
correct.
Is that why we advertise a tax increase?
Yes, exactly. That's part of TRIM, the Truth and Millage process, where it starts July 1, once we receive the information from the tax assessor's office, which actually we work closely with the Department of Revenue. So a lot of this information is flowing through not only my office, but it's going through the Department of Revenue, it's going through the tax assessor's office. Once I receive this information, a lot of this information that I've calculated and determined, and it's really, the state actually tells me what my RLE is going to be. RLE is the required local levy. The state tells me this is what you are going to have to impose. Whether it's a tax increase, it's going to be a reduction, or it's just a plain state standard. But a lot of this information is verified and checked by the Department of Revenue.
I just wanted to make sure that our constituents understand. Let me see if I have this straight.
Sure, go ahead.
There are people, probably not many watching a whole budget meeting, but there may be.
Nobody likes this
When you
stuff.
advertise a tax increase, right away to me it was like, oh my gosh, the school board's raising taxes.
Exactly.
But the tax increase comes from the value of our property. So let's say I was paying taxes on a house that was $200,000 last year, that's valued at $350,000. That tax increase is because the value of the property?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes, And you're ahead of me with my
Well, I'm just
business.
trying to, when you say it's like
Yeah.
we're doing better, that we've lowered the millage, in my head, I was trying to,
Yes, and you are exactly correct. The value of our property, any increase that we've experienced over the last couple of years is not as a result of us reducing the millage rate. It's great when we reduce the millage rate, but if your property had stayed the same, you would have experienced a tax reduction.
right?
You would not have experienced an increase. And I have a slide for that too, so. But yeah, the emphasis on this is that I wanted you all to know that a lot of this information is verified and checked by the Department of Revenue as well as our auditors, so. And, it's not just about me, Susan, doing this.
But may I add to that real quick, just so citizens understand, with the Save Our Homes legislation, with the homestead exemption, their value can only go up 3% a year. And it
3%,
doesn't always go up 3%.
right.
So if they take last year, even the year before, and do a comparison, they'll see
Okay.
not much of a change at all.
Okay, so we're proposing the required local effort, 3.156. Basic discretionary, that remains the same every year, it's 0.748. Our capital outlay is 1.5 mils, 1.50. And our additional voted millage, which passed, is 1.00. And this is the amount that we are proposing to raise, about 60 billion, I wish it was billion, oh my gosh, it would be $60 million for our required local effort, 14 million for the 0.748, 28 million or 28.7 million for capital outlay, and 19.1 million for the out of the additional voted millage. Total we're projecting to receive is about 122.8 million dollars. A lot of times though, by state statute, we are required as a school district to only budget 96% of those funds. We are not allowed to budget the entire amount to take into consideration, we don't collect all of our taxes every year. So the Department of Education has asked us to only budget 96% of those funds. So.
Dr. Ledeco, just as a point of clarity, the required local effort, if the school board were to decide we're not going to levy that tax, then at that point, the state would say, well, we're not going to fund your school district. So
Correct.
It's required that we do our part for them to do their part.
That's why there's the word required. It says that we must levy that tax, that millage rate, in order for us to participate in the FEFP. The FEFP is the Florida Education Finance Program. In order for us to participate, we have to do our part as a local, as a community, to levy some of those dollars to assist with educating our kids. Oh, yes. Okay. The current year proposed millage to be levied exceeds the rollback rate by about 12.10%. That has been high because it changed. Because of that huge change from last year's property values to this year's property values, that huge increase, it made rollback increase 12.10% more than the rollback rate. Again, this is all trim language. So next. And I'm diverting from my presentation. Okay, this is a comparison of last year's millage that we adopt versus what we are proposing for the current year. So you can see that huge increase, the 16.5. I was just shocked. So I was just shocked that it went up so high. And I think this happened across the state. I mean, from a finance officer's perspective, we all spoke about it at our monthly meetings, or weekly meetings, and we, across the board, every school district in the state of Florida had this type of increase. It's just amazing. We were just shocked, So, again, so for last year, we adopted 6.419. We generated about $106 million. I keep saying billion, man. I just want these kids to come here. 6.419, generated about $106 million. Next year, it will be 6.404, 122. And that's where we talked about your home, if it, you know, the impact of, say, your home is valued at $200,000, there were no changes to that value. You would actually experience a $2.63 savings for your taxes. However, again, the change in your tax bill, when you do receive it, it is because the value of your property has increased. So that is why there is a tax increase.
And that's where the cap is, at 3%?
And we are only allowed again, for homeowners, the only exemption that they receive from a school district perspective is the $25,000. As you know, there's another $25,000 that's imposed on a credit that's allowed for homeowners, but it does not include the school districts. So we're only allowed to have the $25,000. So yeah, so if your property didn't increase, you'll get a $2.63 credit. Any savings is great, right? Okay. All right, so what is that? You heard me mention rollback rate, my most favorite subject. All right, so what is the rollback rate? It is the millage rate that is set that would produce the same level of taxes or ad valorem taxes revenue that was levied in the prior year. So basically, if you were to go back to the previous slide, in order for us to generate the same revenue, about $106 million, we would have to roll back our rates. It's a calculation that's done because there's other things that are considered as they do that calculation. We would have to roll that rate back and use that in order to generate the $106 million, not the 122 million. Okay, so that's what the rollback rate is, pretty much. So, okay, continue. Oh, it was established in 1980. Keep going. All right, so next we get into the advertisement. This is the whole purpose of this meeting. That's going to take about 4 hours. It really is. This is the ad that will be, you will appear in the newspaper this Thursday. Again, this is standard. It is part of our requirement to ensure that I place the exact same wording, everything is structured. So based on this, last year's, we're going to, everyone's going to see last year's property tax is about 106 million. This year, we're proposing $122.8 million. And there's where I said, in order for us to participate in the FEFP, to generate $270 million, we would have to raise approximately $122.8 million. Basically, we are generating 31% of the revenue that will help sustain our educational program here in Clay County. This is the overall budget document that will be advertised in the newspaper. Like I said, our total budget is a little over, it's not a little, $500 million, $589,848,650. And as you can see, our district is not, the accounting for our funds is made up of multiple funding sources. These are the key, this is the key funding sources. We've got our general fund, which is our operating budget. It is everything that we need to do to operate our school system. It is salaries, benefits, it is supplies, it is everything you can think of comes out of the general fund. It's the most famous fund in the district. Everyone loves to say, pay it out of the general fund. Dr. Legaco says, no, let's find another solution. Then we have, which is true, right?
Dr. No.
We have the Special Revenue Fund. The Special Revenue Fund is the fund, it's a supplemental funds. It is the funds that are food service, our 410. It is the program that supports our feeding our students. it is housed and budgeted in special revenue. The other projects that are in there are Title I, Title II, IDEA, all of those other special programs that are supplemental to our current educational programs. So it helps, enhances those programs. Debt service, of course, you gotta pay, everybody has loans, right? So we do have to pay for our buildings, and the ones that we do still have out, we still have some debt that we are responsible for. That's about $7 million a year that we are responsible for. And of course, our capital projects. This is the fund that actually takes care of our buildings, our maintenance, our operational support, the fixing of all of our buildings and whatnot. So again, these are the 4 major funds that operate our budget. Now, of course, we've got to see the proposed millage rates that we are proposing. It's 6.4040, and this is our total budget. And these are the ads. One of the requirements of TRIM, and really DOE, is that we advertise how are we going to spend our 1.5 mils. And that ensures that we list and we list all of the projects that we potentially could fund using those dollars. So again, these are the different types of programs, expenditures that we are planning. It doesn't mean that we're going to use the funds to do everything that's on this list. But we want to make sure that whatever it is approved so that we are able to change gears if we need to throughout the year. So if in case we need to, we have to upgrade our locks and whatnot, but if it wasn't on this list, we could not do it. We would have to go through this process. Nobody wants to go through a 4-hour budget meeting again to ensure that we can spend the funds on locks. So, and you'll see, it's a huge list. We've got motor vehicles, we've got equipment. We also pay for debt service out of, it's a transfer. So we do, and as it is required, not required, it is approved by the statute that we can transfer some of those funds to support our debt service. Because again, it's our buildings. So the funds are there to support. So I have to list the requirement of paying our debt. So payments for our loans, property and casualty insurance, that is also approved by the state, by statute, that we can support paying our insurance premiums for our facilities. So this year, the first, one of the changes this year is that the charter schools will now be sharing with our 1.5 mils as well. So with that, I needed to ensure that whatever projects they plan on doing, that it is advertised as well. So that this is new in our advertisement this year. So it's for the charter schools participation. Okay. And of course, I've got to identify when our next actual tentative hearing will be. All right. Okay. Does anybody need a break? Because this is where it gets really fun. All right. Let's see. Okay, I'm going to go over each fund and I'm going to go over each fund and how it supports the overall operation of our system, our school system. Because I'm 500 and over $500 million. Where does it go? How is it being spent? So with that, I'll start with the general fund. The general fund, like I said, is the biggest, largest fund in our overall budget, and it supports these items here. Your curriculum and instruction, staff professional development, technology, facility repairs, transportation, everything you can think of, the general fund supports. All right. What this is a pictorial view of our revenue of the general fund. And you can see clearly where the majority of our funds are being generated from. It's the state dollars. The 273,750, you see it's the biggest pie. This is our local contribution. Federal is a small percentage. And the other financing sources is actually the transfer that I talked about that comes from the capital outlay, the LCIF funds. Okay, this is a breakdown of all of our revenues that we potentially receive in the district under the general fund. You can see what our local revenues are. Property taxes, that's the largest of them, 71 million. We do get some redemptions, delinquent taxes. It's paid after, it's due after, what is that, November? January, February, maybe up through June, right, Sonia? Sometimes we'll receive.
In the tax sales.
Yeah. By the way, this is Sonia Finley. She is the finance director and my right hand, and she knows this inside out. If you all have questions, call her. No, I'm just teasing. Oh, gosh. I told you, love goes into this. I have to laugh at this. I'm sorry. Okay, so serious now. All right, property tax, interest. All right. I guess this year, has everybody's bank account went up? I know mine didn't, but apparently the interest rate started going back up. Because as you can see, we received about $2.9 million in interest this year. So a safe budgeting, I budget about $1 million just to be safe. I don't want to, if in case I don't receive a whole lot in next year, I don't know what the market's going to do. If it continues to go up, great. We will change that budget number. But for right now, I think a conservative number will be, I budgeted about $1 million there. The gifts, grants, we get a few dollars in there. That's specifically Clear Wire, which is the rental of our radio towers, I believe. So get some rent from that. Educational fees, some other indirect costs, lease, rent. We get about $600,000. That is the use of our facilities. If anyone's wanting to know what that is, it is the use of our facilities. We collect about $600,000 a year. Textbooks, sometimes we get them, sometimes we don't. So then you get into the state revenue. The FEFP, as you can see, is the biggest contribution. The categoricals is part of the FEFP, so combine those two. Workforce. And keep in mind, a lot of this is already structured for me using our red book. We've got to ensure that I record revenue in those categories. It's not that I can just stick it in one account or anything. I have to put it in the appropriate revenue source that's directed. Sorry. That's directed at, that's directed from the Department of Department of Education. I'm sorry. All right, one of the things I did want to say before I continued on, some of the factors that actually impacted our budget this year. You know, every year we go through this and we wonder again, I go back to the legislature, we wait to find out what changes are going to happen. Obviously, they start talking about it in January, even sometimes before, but we really don't know. It's all just talk at that point. And then you go through and wait until maybe March, April to decide what are they going to finally decide on, to let us know how can we budget our dollars. I know in the legislature, there's a lot of other things that they're talking about, they're deciding on and whatnot, and it's just not the school board the school districts that they're deciding on their fate, it's everybody else, you know, the roads, the different divisions, all of that. So, you know, it's, like I said, it's very hard to decide and look at that crystal ball and say, okay, what am I going to get? What is the best number to choose to budget for our upcoming budget? But this year, what I did do is look at some of the things that could potentially impact us. And of course, you know, once we got the final numbers, we were able to adjust and make sure that I can deliver a balanced budget to the board and to the constituents out there. So one of the things, as everyone knows, retirement, I'm sure every government agency is experiencing this. Retirement dollars went up. That increased significantly. It went up about 2% for us. What that is about a $4 million hit for us. So the retirement went up. We had some overall increases to our operational expenditures. Of course, you know, the standard inflation that's going on right now, everything is costing so much more. So we needed to adjust some of those potential expenditures, utilities, electricity, water, all of those things went up. So with that, the budget was adjusted based on that. Of course, this year we had a new school opening, a new school that we opened, Spring Park. So that's also added to our budget. And yes, we might have received increased FTE, but that's just the FTE for supporting the teachers. There are other factors that go into opening a school that's not supported by the FTE only. So there's other dollars that we've got to contribute to make sure we have a successful opening and continue to support that school. Our ESSA funds, as you know, the last couple of years we've been blessed to have those funds to help us carry out some of the many educational programs. We were very lucky to have those dollars, but it's going away. A lot of those funds are finished, completed September of this year. So, you know, we were great, we had it, it's good. We have about one more year to go with some of the funds. And you'll see in one of my slides, you'll see what we have about left. And that's just an estimate. We're still, keep in mind, a lot of these numbers will change between now and September because we're still closing the year as well. Not only are we trying to open up the school year and ensure that the schools have the funds to operate, but we're also trying to close the year. In our accounting world, we have a lot of entries to make, adjusting entries that need to be made before we can close the school year. Okay? Scholarships. I'm telling you, we started off with about $2 million a couple of years ago. 2 years ago, it went from less than $1 million to about, I think it was $3 million, $4 million. Last year it was $8 million. This year, $15 million in scholarships. It's a huge hit, huge loss, you know. And what's hurting is the fact that it's not aligning with the FTE, that we're losing and gaining, you know, it's not aligning. So therefore, it's a big loss, the $15 million. What else? Charter school enrollment, that went up. It went up this year, and there's a slide I have on that. Liability insurance, the cost of operating, it went up significantly. The board approved the contract with Arthur Gallagher to fund our liability insurance, and that went up significantly as well. So. And for the first time in, I don't know how many years, I've never seen this happen in my career, and I've been doing this over 30 years now, proration in the second calc. Okay, let me go back one more. Part of our funding that we receive, we start off with a budget, right? Then, throughout the year, we have different calculations. It is where we take the enrollment numbers that is submitted to the state. The state uses those numbers and to determine how much money did Clay County generate truly in FEFP, right? Those calculations are done, I think, the key ones are 4 times a year. No, 3 times a year. The first one is the second calculation. It's the conference report where, and it's a combination of 2. It's a conference report where the state provides us with what the legislature has given school districts as it relates to funding. So that's the conference report. That is released from when the legislature is done, right? Then on July 19th, the state certifies the tax roll. The Department of Revenue certifies those numbers for each school district. And then a new calculation is done by the Department of Education. It is called the second calculation. That is where my budget and everything has to align with what those numbers are indicated on that report. So we do our adjustments, we make those changes. This next calculation is done in October. When the kids are back, we know what our enrollment, what the students that are in the classrooms that are butts in the seats, and that is done in October, where that number is then sent to the state does their calculation, and then they compare to what we project, and then they adjust. So the revenue that we're receiving is the actual dollars for FTE reported in October, and projected numbers that were done in January. Okay, so we're dealing with projections and actual, half and half, right? And then the next calculation is done in February, where again, the state looks at our dollars, looks at our enrollment, not in dollars, looks at our enrollment, and then says, okay, did Clay County really make the dollars that they said they were going to project? With that being said, they make another adjustment, and of course, they let us know, hey, you were under-projected or over-projected, and they adjust our funding for that. So again, it's a constant modification, changing of our FTE. We make sure our budget changes that constantly once we have those changes. And you, the board, I send you the financial statements every month, so you know what changes that are being done to the budget. So,
Dr. Lebecco,
yes.
under voluntary pre-K,
Yes.
why are we getting so much less money in that program when, it seems like that's something that the governor's wanting to expand. We hear a lot about early childhood education. Are we getting funding for that from another source to compensate for the loss in that budget item?
No, the VPK is actually, that's state revenue. The VPK dollars are, again, it's a calculation. It is not part of the FEFP. And the dollars we receive, I think it's about 3,000, is it 3? Do you remember the value of VPK? I think it's about 3,000 per kid. Now, the VPK program is primarily to support instruction for 3 hours, I believe, or 4 hours in the morning, right?
Right. It's usually 7 to 11.
Right.
Yep.
So with that being said, though, we actually have the program the entire day.
Right.
So, so the funding that we receive is only for those 3 hours of service. So based on that, and again, it's also based on enrollment. Each class should have about 18 kids, whether or not all the kids, and then they have to show up every single day. If they don't show up every day, we do not get the funding for that student. So it's butts in the seats as well. But it's not as much as we typically would. And again, this is just estimated based on what I've seen in the past year.
Well, it looks
But
like
the enrollment is kind of,
from 21-22 to 22-23, it looks like a decrease of
Right.
almost 150 million.
well, again, there could be several factors that,
Sorry.
there could be several factors that impacts that. It could be that they're not coming to our schools, they're going somewhere else. It's just the enrollment. How many kids do we have? So again, as we go through the year, if that number rises, then yes. But as far as I know, that is we would have to speak with the program officer to see whether or not what's going on in that program. How can we generate more kids, or do we have the enrollment there at the schools?
I know I've had parents contact me about wanting to get their child in for VPK at one of our schools and it's full.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I just, when I see that the
Yeah.
dollar amount is less, I'm kind of wondering what's
yeah.
right.
But the challenge is to offer more VPK means that you would have to find additional funding for that. So we offer a blended program in an attempt to pay for that program. It's a goal of mine to have pre-K. It's a matter of, can we afford to do that and increase the spots?
Is that, I know in some private preschools, they'll charge for the additional extended day that the state doesn't cover. Is that something that we're able to do as a school district?
Yes.
I believe we could do that, yeah.
And we are doing it. We are doing it, and some. Yeah.
But that's not showing up there in your state revenues.
Right.
That'll
It's under
show up
local.
under local revenues,
Right.
since the parents paying the tuition.
Right.
Under fees, or
Okay.
educational.
It's part of the educational fees.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry for the rabbit hole.
No, that's fine, that's fine. Again, we can go down to federal revenues, where we receive some dollars for impact aid. Those are our military families here in Clay County. ROTC, it's for our ROTC program. Medicaid, we receive about $2 million for billing, and we have some miscellaneous dollars, so about $3 million that we receive in federal revenues. And again, I keep saying this is all an estimate. As we go through the year, these numbers change as we receive more money, so more funds. So our total revenue is about $355 million in the general fund. Okay, this is just a summary of our transfers that we do take for some of our, the other financing sources. And really, other financing sources are our transfers that come into the general fund. So we've got the transfer from LCIF. We've got a little bit of insurance loss recovery that comes in from the 7-Eleven fund. Sale of land and equipment. We do have, as part of our referendum, I believe, or, not referendum, our, what is that word I'm trying to say? The,
Safety, security, millage.
yeah, but the resolution, oh my God, the resolution, part of the resolution, it was agreed that we would transfer about, we would use about $2 million of that to support some of our insurance coverage. So that's a transfer that's done, and sometimes we transfer from our internal service fund, and I will explain that $3 million as we get to it. The internal service fund is our self-insurance programs, so. All right, I know, look at this, I'm taking forever, because it's such an exciting topic, oh my gosh. Yeah, right? All right, let's get into the expenditures. How are we gonna spend all these funds? Okay, there's where it all goes. Goes to our schools. A lot of these dollars are in our schools. Other instructional services. Part of it is our categoricals. We've got to spend it in the manner that it was, like, for instance, mental health. It has to be spent on mental health. I can't take it and spend it on other programs. District-wide allocations, that means, property and liability insurance, workers' comp, sick leave, all of those things. There are some that are direct expenditures, which is instruction. You get FTE, you spend it on teachers, because you get the students, you pay for the teacher's salary, they teach. But in order to operate an operation such as this, it's a large business, it's a business. We've got to support the other types of expenditures, such as annual leave, the benefits that we offer to our teachers, to our staff. We've got to keep insurance someone gets hurt, workers' comp. There are expenditures that we experience through that. So we've got to pay for it. So there are things, indirect expenditures that need to be covered using some of these funds. So, also with non-reoccurring appropriations. Sometimes the legislature tells us, okay, you will do this. You will do this, whether or not we like it or not. Last year, was it last year? We were mandated to raise our minimum rate to $15 an hour. We didn't expect that. We were expecting to do that in the next couple of years, to strategically get up to that number, because we never had the number. Well, guess what? We had to do it that day, and it was a short notice, right, wasn't it? So, therefore, that's where we got together again, put our heads together to see what can we do to ensure that we meet that mandatory requirement of the state. So, again, non-reoccurring appropriations. I believe this year we've got to hire, what was that position?
District Threat Management Coordinator.
Right, yes. We didn't expect to do that. That was a position I believe came to the board, and it was a requirement of the state. You will do this. So, again, making those changes, last minute changes, we've got to adjust. Okay, next. Okay. As I go through this, I wanted to ensure that you all do have the breakdown of what some of these codes mean. But right, for me, I've got to, for finance, I shouldn't say for me, for finance, for the financial side of this business, we are required to maintain a uniform chart of accounts. That is directed by the state. They provide us with a guidance to ensure that we are recording and reporting the revenues and expenditures appropriately in within the system. It is really for transparency, to ensure that the public understands where are these funds really being spent, and is it targeting what are we supposed to spend it on? So, and a lot of times, in my brain, this is simple. I understand this, but I know it's difficult sometimes out there that it's probably a foreign language. So I wanted to make sure that this is out there so they know instruction. Everything's sitting in instruction. You can find it under a function code 5000, 5XXX. It could be 5100, 52, 53. There are levels of those codes. But everything dealing with instruction, direct instruction, you will find that in function code 5000. There are other indirect instructional codes, but it still supports the instructional program, the 6000. Anything that's in 6000, 6100, 6200, 63, 64, professional development is 64, 65, IT. Information services, that's specifically for instruction. There's another code that reports IT expenditures, but it's under a different code to show that it's not for instruction, it's for everything else. So, I just wanted you guys to have that so you know what it is. Share my pain, kind of thing. All right, here are the function codes that I just talked about. See, I said 5,000, but when you look at the red book, I wonder, Bonnie, can you bring the red book up, you think? I just want to show you, it's just an example, showing, It's like seeing is believing, so I want to show it. It's like having a husband, you got to show it to them so they'll believe you. Go to chapter 4.
Let's stay focused.
Okay, this is the red book. I just wanted everyone to see. Again, it breaks it down by fund. It tells us where the funds are. You can see general fund, 100. So when you look at the financial statements, you can delineate what fund am I speaking about. So come on down.
Do you have this memorized?
She does.
Yes, of course.
Some of it, not all of it.
She sees it in her sleep.
Come on down. Yes, I want to go to the function codes.
There's our special.
No, this is all, these are object codes. We will go over object codes, but I promise you, I won't show you this
These
again.
are fun.
Come on, keep,
No?
oh, food service, yeah, these are funds. Keep going, keep going, keep going. See, they tell us where we gotta put our ESSA funds. They give us the code for it. Specific, everything's specific. All right, keep going, keep going, keep going. All the way. All right, see, here it tells you what the object codes are. Salaries are 100, and then it breaks it down even further. Administrators are gonna show up in 110. Other certified classroom teachers, 120, 130, and it defines what they are, who they are, not what they are, who they are. So keep going.
I don't think I don't know.
No, they need to see the function.
Okay.
Keep going. This is just 2 seconds of your time, okay, to add to my 4-hour presentation. Keep going, keep going, keep going. See all those numbers? That's what we deal with, making sure everything is categorized properly, appropriately. Keep going. All right, functions.
Here we go.
Yes, and it talks about the different types of functions and where you need to place these items. So keep going to the 5,000.
There we go.
There's the 5,000. Remember I said you're looking at 5XX. It's in the budget. I have to roll everything up. Otherwise, that would be a huge ad. And then, like I said, it breaks it down by the different categories. Like 5,100 is your basic teachers. FEFB, general, everything. Then you've got your ESE. All your teachers or all expenditures that are showing up in the financial report is under 5,200. So anything under 52, you can assume it is ESE. Okay? 53, CTE, career education. 54, adult education. Pre-K is housed in 5,500. You know? And then you go down and you've got 6,000, which is student, and then it talks about the 6,100, 62. It's just a mirage of numbers that you use in order to ensure that we are reporting every expenditure in the appropriate line item, so we are transparent. Everything is out there. Anyone can come and take a look at this budget, expenditures, anything. It is a public. It's available to the public to see exactly how we are spending our funds. Okay, so let's get into this. I'll try to go fast now, okay? So, all right, this is our function codes, and again, one of the things that you need to keep in mind as you're looking at this budget is that the column for final, these numbers were audited by the Auditor General. So these numbers are our final numbers, and a lot of folks look at this. Our bond rating agencies, they look at these numbers. The Auditor General, of course, they ensure that we are fiscally sound. We're, what is the word they use? That we are using our dollars appropriately. The audit.
In accordance with generally accepted accounting principles?
Right. Yeah, so we are following the guidelines. So this column is we've been audited and it's final, so nothing changes on this. And all the adjustment entries have been made, everything is done. This, it says unaudited final, we are just beginning our audit process. They are now starting to look at our expenditures. They are starting to review everything. So therefore, these are just it's not estimate, it's what's in our system right now. And then once the auditors take a look at it, there could be adjusting entries that they may feel that needs to be moved somewhere else or change function codes, whatever. So we need to make those changes. And then, of course, at the end, Ashley, Mary was the one we meet at the end of that audit, and the auditors go over those changes with you, so you are aware.
It's wonderful.
It's a wonderful meeting, yes. It goes over all the wonderful changes we've made and what they think we should be doing. And then, of course, this is the final budget. These are estimated numbers. So you're looking at expenditures, what we actually spent, and budget, what we think we will spend. So a lot of times what you're looking at, you might say, well, in 5,000, I've got $220 million that I spent, but yet I'm budgeting about $236 million. That's an estimated number with what could potentially happen throughout the year. So there's a huge variance between what actually happened and what we're budgeting. It might be high, it might be low, but it adjusts accordingly throughout the year. And then at the end of the year, the final numbers are pretty much in line with the expenditures. If you were to go back and look at last year's budget, you will see that when I budgeted for salaries here, it was close to that number. It was maybe a $2 million variance. It's not, so I just want to make sure the understanding is there's a difference between actual spent and budgeting. So.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're in the back. Do you need water? I'm good for right now, thank you. Okay, this, I tried to make the line a little wider like the others, but it didn't happen, so I apologize for that. But you can see what I'm trying to say. A lot of the dollars are going into the instructional side of it, but you can also see student personnel services, media, curriculum, staff development, all of these areas here. This is all instruction, and it's all budgeted at the school level. Well, there's some at the state, district level. Okay, all right. I keep saying I promise I'm going to go fast, but it's so exciting. God. All right, object codes.
She hints us at that.
All right, you remember seeing in the red book the object codes? It's another level of reporting. So here we break it down even further. So out of my 5,000 for all of the functions, how much of those dollars are actually going to salaries? How much is actually going to benefits, purchase services, energy, all the different components of that of the budget? And this is the breakdown. As you can see, the biggest expense is in salaries and benefits. 77% of our dollars are budgeted for salaries and benefits. In the prior year's actual cost, it's a little over 80%. So, and that's really the point of this chart. So you can see, we're a huge organization.
Quick question. You see from 81% down to 77%, but
Right.
we're opening another school.
Right.
However, with the transfer of the students to that school, that's where the transfer of the personnel go as well.
Yes,
And
part
so
of
we
it.
don't necessarily plan for an additional 60 teachers, let's say.
Well, no, you're right. Some of the staff do transition over, but there is some cost associated because, again, the counselor, you're not going to take the counselor from the prior school to the new school, so you've got to
Right.
hire a counselor.
So, but that percentage went down.
Yeah, but you've got to also remember,
Because of
we're
your
looking at two different totals. This is the percentage over the total budget.
Bingo.
So
Thank you.
that, the percentage might look like it's down, however, it's probably in alignment with where we will end up.
Right. It's more money, but that's.
Right,
just
so that
pointing thank you.
variance make a change.
Perfect, thanks.
Yeah. And again, it shows where the majority of our funds are in salaries and benefits. So, that's just so. Okay. All right, we'll speed it up. Okay, this is the summary of our revenues, expenditures, and any changes in our fund balance. So as you can see, we ended, and again, I talk about the audited. We projected about 5% that year. After audit adjustments and everything, we ended up in a good place, about 5.26% for 21-22. This year, I'm predicting we'll end up about 4.53%. That could change, it could go up, it could go down. It just depends on what the expectation will be from the auditors once they look at our books. For the current year, we're projecting about 4.71 based on the revenue that we believe we will receive and the expenditures that we intend to spend. That's my crystal ball. Okay? This is my favorite slide out of all of it. The fund balance chart. as you know, state requires that we maintain at least 3%. If we go below, then there's consequences that we've got to face with the state department. But we have been maintaining above 3%. We've been trying to raise that percentage, but as you know, that's a difficult thing to do at this point, but we've been maintaining about a 4 or 5%. So, and really, you can see what that value is. It's about $16 million. And the purpose of a fund balance is really a savings account. You know, think about it as a savings account for emergency type activities. What if we get say, a hurricane? What if one of our schools gets flattened? Like some of these schools, last year I think it was in North Florida?
South Carolina.
Yeah, where they had that major storm and they couldn't open for months, right? How much does the school cost?
Elementary is about 40, middle K8 is about 80, and the high school is 150.
Do you think we can afford a school?
No.
Look at that. This is what I have in fund balance. That's, you know, I don't have enough in fund balance to support an emergency. Let's put it that way. That's why I don't understand even why the state even uses 3%. It should be 10, 15% is what we should be maintaining. But I know in Florida we struggle with maintaining a 3% fund balance. A lot of school districts are, you know. But that was my point. It's you know, it's just a struggle to have a savings account.
Is this the end of the year projection? Does it go up and down during the year?
Yes. Yeah, it just depends how much cash we have in, how much goes out, it just depends. And then in November,
Right,
oh, we're rich in November.
yeah.
We have a lot of funds coming in from the taxes, you know, and I wish it could stay there, but then in the next following months, I gotta pay bills, you know? So it goes down, so it goes up and down. And really, to be honest, I wouldn't know how much money we actually spent this closing year, this year that we've done, because the state hasn't even sent me my final calculation. We don't get that till September, late September, early October of this year. And that is when I can tell whether or not I met my projections or whether or not I am even close to that 4.53%. And how we are what? August, September, 2 months into the new school year. So it is just so, you know, when we receive and find out whether or not we were successful in the previous year, we're already into our new fiscal year. So there's always that challenge of, okay, did we make it, did we not? Did I budget appropriately for the new year? Do I have to make an adjustment from the prior year? And, you know, all of those numbers roll into the new year. So for fund balance to help support operations for the new year. So it's an accounting thing, you know, so it's just a lot of movement of numbers. So anyway, so that's fund balance. Okay, now we'll go into the 1 mil, which is the 1 mil. Part of the 1 mil is general fund. So what I try to do here is really break out those dollars from the general fund so that you can see exactly how those dollars are being spent. And as you know, primarily the majority of those dollars, based on the resolution, is for safety and security of our schools. So therefore, the majority of the expenditures are in the operation of plants, which that is where in Red Book it says we are to report our safety and security officers, our police officers, and all of those activities that relate to safety and security. In addition to that, part of it was hardening of our schools to ensure that we took care of what is that, locks, entrance, the different things.
Hardening.
So, single entry point. But we are to report it under function 7400, facilities, acquisition, and construction, because that's what it is. So you can see the majority of our cost is in here, 7400, and in operational plans. There are some other expenditures, the transportation. It is our, I believe, our radio system for our buses that is costed there. Central service, just a small amount there, 7,800. And that really, when you look at the red book, all, other than instruction, a lot of our professional development is budgeted under 6,400. That is professional development. But it's specific to instruction. You cannot budget anything else. That's all you can budget in there, 6,400. And that's where a lot of the activities happen under Jenny Shepard, who handles the professional development program here at the district for our teachers. But for others, such as myself, because we do have to learn too, it is budgeted under the 7,700 function. And again, the officers, they do have training that they partake in throughout the year, and that is where I've got to budget for. So that's what that number is. Okay, again, another breakdown of how those dollars are being spent. As you can see, the majority of it is really in, well, it's equal with salaries, benefits, and purchase services. Part of this is those contracts that you approved in the last previous board meeting for the Orange Park police officer, Orange Park, right, and Green Cove Springs, those two contracts. That's part of it here, and other contracts that we may have with other vendors. And of course, capital outlay, the 12.5 million, where we spend a lot of our dollars in hardening of our schools.
Is there something specific, purchases, services, 600,000 to now 2 million?
Yes. Keep going. This is just the fund balance, the summary. Keep going. Okay, so this is where all of the dollars are being spent, or projected to be spent. So school, the salaries and benefits is about 3.6 million. School, their operational expense is about 1.2 million. The school guardians, we do have some guardians there, so it's about 490 something thousand. The facilities is about 12.4. And of course, this year, we will also be sharing our the 1.0, yes, 1 mil, get them mixed up, with our charter schools. So that's part of the 300 you saw. So it is a little over $1 million that will be directed to the charter schools.
So that's reflected in the purchase services line?
Yes, yes. And the health insurance transfer that we spoke about, the $2 million. So that's how the 21 million will be projected to be expensed. Okay? Okay, so now we're going into the debt service. As you recall, on that advertisement, you had the general fund, then you had federal revenues, and then you had debt service, and then capital. Yeah, we'll get to the federal revenues in a minute, but this is our debt service. These are the, I'll call it loans. These are our loans that are out there. We have the COPS, Certificate of Participation. That's the largest of it. We have about a 5.1 million responsibility, and that's about, this is annually, so it's really about the same every year. It just depends on which COP is coming due you know, the monthly pay, the annual payment changes depending on which one we're paying on. So,
And I assume all our interest is fixed at an older rate.
yes, yes. And you'll see, I think I have the rates in there, so.
We're not leasing buses anymore, we're purchasing buses.
I believe we are purchasing buses, but this was a lease that we did 4 years ago. We purchased 100 buses.
When does it
I mean
end?
leased.
Does it ever end?
The
bus lease?
It's a 7-year
Yeah.
lease, so we have about,
No,
it'll be
No, this
7
is-
years, so we have
Oh.
about 3 years left.
To
Okay,
pay on that.
okay.
But there's a replacement cycle each year, so you're
That was the
gonna,
way if we buy buses.
you're gonna
Correct,
have,
yes.
you're gonna be purchasing buses every year because you're replacing the old ones. It's
Right.
kind of like computers, same principle.
We do
On a
sell
cycle.
the old buses, and we're able to use that money to purchase new buses.
I think if I remember right, the lease was to get all of our buses air
At the same,
conditioned.
Right.
at the same time,
Right, so
yeah.
we
Yes.
had a whole
Huge
fleet of air
purchase.
conditioned buses.
Yeah,
But
I
we
think
couldn't
there were
buy that
100
many at once.
100 buses we purchased, we leased.
Yep.
So basically, this is what we started off with, the principal and interest of some of our debt or loans. You can see the bus lease, we paid $10.6 million for 100 of those buses, and we're continually paying on it, and this is what our payments will be for the 23-24 school year. And again, this is the summary of revenues and expenditures. All right, so this is a breakdown of all our debt, basically what they represent. So you can see we have the bus lease right here. This is what we have remaining to be paid. 25-26 will be the last year we pay on that lease. One of our cops is the 205. It was Fleming Island High School where we refinanced it, so we've got about $712,000 left on it. Oak Leaf High School, Lake Asbury Junior High, we still have it to about a $10 million responsibility, and Ridgeview High School.
Good Lord.
So yeah, there you go. All right, we'll get into the capital funds. Again, the capital funds is just similar to the general fund. We report by revenue, and you can see we don't get any federal revenues from for capital, but we do get local, which is the LCIF, local capital improvement, which is the property tax. You can see the sales tax. We do have the sales tax dollars coming in. And I know it's low right now, about 16 million. That was a cautious number. It will change during the year if it starts going up. Impact fees, again, the same thing. And you know, from when you look at it, it seems like it's going down. Prior year, we had 11.9. This past year, we received about 9.1. So I don't know what's
We
happening.
raised
with
the impact fees, does it have an effect on that number?
If you raise it,
Well,
the
we
fees.
did.
We did.
That,
But when
however,
do we
that-
start collecting?
So we had a 3-month grace period on the
Right.
raise of the impact fees. They just went into effect
Yeah.
June 1st. However, anybody that applied and had an application in, it doesn't, as long as they had it in before June 1st, they still get the old rate. And as of right now, as far as the last reports, everything has still been at the old rate. So we haven't gotten any of the impact fee increases yet.
When would that start?
Well, it depends on when they put their application. Any application that's put in after June 1st will get the new rate.
So that technically could go up as well.
It could.
But
That all
also-
depends on development too.
Right.
How many houses are being built.
Plus I saw, didn't they change the rules where it's when the lights go on? When we
Yes.
collect the funds.
Correct.
So that is also a delay. Used to before, we would get it right as they signed the paper to say we're building a home. But then they changed the rules as far as when the lights go on, that's when we would start collecting on the new payments.
Collection's always in arrears, just
Yeah,
a couple months
always
behind.
Okay, and state dollars, it's not very much, as you can see. And this here, I know you've seen charter schools in every other area, those are new. This has been standard across the board, it's just a flow through. It is dollars that the state provides to the charters directly, but the funds come to us first, and then we have to distribute it to the state, to the charters.
What is that ed facility security, that 500,000?
That was a grant, where is it? Ed facilities.
Under state revenue.
It was a safety and security grant. Yeah, it is, yeah. It was a, but I believe we
It's not
didn't get,
recurring.
it should be reported. Oh. Sonia, is this part of the state?
Yeah, we talked about
facility
that really should be moved,
Moved up here, right? Yeah. We created this category and it was missed. I put it in the 1.2. It really should be up here. This is the Ed Facilities grant that we get, the safety and security. We started off with about, I remember the first grant we got, it was like around 800,000, right? We got about $800,000 to provide safety and security, hardening, same thing, hardening of our schools. And each year it went down a little by little. A lot of this, even though it looks like a lot, is roll forward from the prior years. So we didn't spend all of the dollars. Even the year through COVID, we didn't spend a lot of it because of the fact that everything was so costly and was so hard to get. So a lot of it just keeps rolling to the new year. We have a couple of years to spend those dollars, and the state notifies us when they're ready to pull those dollars back, but we have not ever given back those dollars. If you know me, nobody sends money back. I make sure we spend it somehow. Anyway, so this number, when you get the next presentation, this number will move up to this, yeah, and we're hoping for the next year to get some dollars. It may not be 500, I think it might be about 300,000 for that grant. But it's also targeted for safety and security of our buildings. Okay. Yes. Oh, no, go back one more. Okay, for capital though, everything is funded under or reported under function 7400. So therefore, we don't have a breakdown by function, but we do have a breakdown by object codes, where are those dollars being spent? And you can see here, this is a chart that provides you with that, where we're spending the majority of those dollars. So. Okay. And a summary will end up at about a fund balance of about $6.2 million. Again, a lot of this, you'll see a fund balance here of $69.44 million. Most of that is restricted. A lot of it is just rolling forward those projects that are not complete. So the cost associated with those projects are rolled to the new year and is added into the fund balance. It is a cost, it is restricted, and therefore where we ended up. And then for the next year, we appropriate the majority of our dollars in capital for projects. It is targeted specifically for projects, and those projects are advertised in the newspaper. So, okay. This is a slide I added only because of the fact that a lot of our funds are being distributed to the charters. And typically, the FEFP, which is the general fund, that has been standard across the board. They earn the dollars based on their FTE. They do have students, we report them, and they generate the dollars. So it's just like everything else, dollars follow the students. So with that being said, though, I wanted to give you a pictorial view of the dollars that are actually going to other sites that are, they are part of our school district, so therefore these are the funds that are distributed to them. So the FEFP general fund, we're spending about $17.4 million. 16.7 of it are the charters. We also have contracts with AMI and PACE. They too have students that are attending their facility, and we report on those FTEs as well. And according to statute, we are required to distribute those funds to them. So that's part of their dollars as well.
Is it true that charter schools get the state portion but not the federal portion of money?
No, they get everything.
They get both?
Yes. And you don't see federal here because of the fact that when you speak of federal, are you talking about the grants, the Title I, Title II? Yes. On the charters though, just like any grant, they have to qualify for those funds. So like Title I, they have to be under the poverty rate to qualify for those dollars.
Okay.
I don't believe, and Ryan Widdison is the one who manages that, I don't believe that there were any charters that qualified
But
this
they're not
year.
restricted from federal funds if they...
No, they get, every year, we send out a notice to the charters to ask them if they would like to participate in our federal funds. IDEA, they do qualify for services. It just makes sure that the students do have a need in order to receive the services. So we do send, right Melanie, we do send staff to assist to provide that type of service for our students in the charters. So yes, they do participate.
Dr. Legutko, if they opt to have the funding instead of the staffing,
Yes.
how is that funding calculated for the charters?
The way that is, they do have the option to change. And typically that's mainly for Title II. I believe at the time when I did that stuff, I believe it was Title II. You could choose service or funds. We could provide the same professional development. You could participate in our training. In order to, the way that we do calculate the funds is based on the per pupil allocation. So we take the total per pupil participation who do qualify and come up with that percentage and apply that amount to the total funding, and then they are distributed those dollars.
So the percentage is based on the number of students who qualify in the whole district?
Yes.
Okay, so it's their number
And the
divided by the number in the total district, and they get that portion?
Yes, a proportionate share. Okay, now we go into the special revenue. We're getting close, everybody. Getting close, we're close. 45. Yeah. All right, special revenue. Again, what makes up, like on the ad, you'll see special revenue. And what makes up that are these different funding sources. You've got the food service. You've got contracted programs, which is the 420 that we just talked about, Title I, Title II, those types of programs. We also had the CARES funding. Remember, we had a bunch of CARES funding, and there were several different categories of funding, of which we had to maintain separation of which one is which. So therefore, I broke it down by which one is, the 441s, 442s, 443s, and right now we pretty much have these two left. The rest, these have already expired. So, let's go to the next. We'll go over the food service first. Okay. Food service, of course, you can see where their dollars are being, where we receive our dollars. Again, it's from the National School Lunch Program. We receive funding from those folks for feeding our students. You can see local revenue. This is our lunch where we charge a fee for purchasing lunch. So that's the revenue that we bring in, estimated. We get a little bit of state revenue. And then the majority of our dollars come from the federal government, National School Lunch Program. And I wanted to explain this part here because you'll see there's a lot of funds here in the National School Lunch, whereas in the prior year we did not. Does anyone know why? Remember, during COVID, we were we were providing lunch and breakfast at no charge. Everyone ate, everyone. I believe it was in 22-23, they stopped that program and went back to being standard operating procedure, where we're now receiving our dollars in lunch. It's categorized now what it is. Before, they were giving us the funds all in the summer food program. That's where we were required to report those dollars. But now it's changed. As you can see how drastically it's dropped. Because we're no longer receiving the funds there. It is now coming into the categories where they are being funded from.
And that tentative budget includes the price increase for the kids?
Yes.
The small increase on their...
Yes. Next. Okay, how are we spending those dollars? And by category of object codes, you can see salaries and benefits, paid for our lunchroom managers and lunch support personnel. And the majority of our expenses are in food and supplies, because we're buying food. The purpose of those funds are for food. Food service is the only fund under the federal category that's allowed to have a fund balance. So with that, we do have, go to the next one. Their fund balance is about they're ending up at about 8.5. Susie Glover, who manages that program, does a very good job of maintaining and managing the food service. They are self-sustaining and does a very good job. They have no support from the general
As a
fund.
new person,
Susie Glover?
why are they allowed to have a balance? Because the price each month changes, or?
No.
What is that for?
Food service is operated like any other fund, just like general fund or capital projects. They too need to maintain, it's an operation. So you are paying for people, you are, it's not a supplemental program. It is a program that operates on school. It's an operational program.
Dr. Legato, but they maintain a fund balance because they're self-sustaining?
Yes.
Is that right? So they don't dip into the general fund, so they have their own fund balance?
Okay, that makes sense.
Yes.
It doesn't dip into our fund balance if
That's what I
they have a shortfall.
Think of it as a separate program, just like all of our other programs. Think of it as a bank, like your own home. It's an independent program by itself. And they are required to maintain a fund balance. That fund balance is directed at having at least 3 months of 3 months of operational expenditures, so that they can support their stuff if anything happens. And that 3.9 is way higher than what they need. So they're doing very, very well. And I like that, because then they don't have to ask me for funds. All right, now we are going into the special revenue fund. And I talked about Title I, Title II. Keep in mind, these funds are supplemental to all our programs. So if these programs were to go away, then all the additional support that we've been providing, we would not be able to. So, for CTE, of course. Title II, this is primarily for principal and teacher training and recruiting. IDEA, Title I, Title III. So these are the standard grants that we do receive every year. It is, the way we receive it, it's an application that's sent every year, July 1, actually June 30th, so that there's no break in service, because we do pay for salaries and benefits. So we have to have those applications in DOE by June 30th in order for us to continue the support. And it's standard, we know we're going to get these funds, we just don't know what it is. But it has been about the same dollars. It just depends on the federal government, and they also go through this budget process that determine what funding they are going to provide to the overall country, every state.
A recurring, always.
Yes.
Okay.
Pretty much, unless the federal government decides that they need to pull back. I mean, every year we hear sometimes, oh, they're pulling Title II. They're not going to give us any more Title II funds. You know, it just depends what happens in Washington. You know, again, they go through the budget process just like we do. And the states wait to find out exactly how much we're going to receive. And then the state go through their process to determine how many dollars we are going to get by county.
Dr. Legucco, so Title II is federal dollars, and I'm seeing here it's Part A is teacher and principal training and recruiting. So does that mean that the training that we pay for has to be approved at the national level? Or do we have freedom to choose what we're going to provide our teachers with?
Well, it's a process. When we submit our application, we submit it to the state. The state looks at it, reviews it to ensure that it meets the criteria of what they've submitted to the federal government.
Okay.
So the state actually submits an application to the federal government encompassing all of what maybe counties might be doing. So I mean, again, this is a standard operating procedure for years that we've been doing it, and the state looks at data from prior year and look at what counties are doing, what type of, and it's directed to. It tells you exactly how you're supposed to spend those specific dollars, and if it's targeted for education, then of course, you know, some of those programs that we've looked at, that we've submitted on our application when Jenny submits it, it tells what are we going to do, and it's specific to principals and teachers.
And to what kind of training they receive?
Yes. So we're expecting to receive about $15 million, and here's where most of the dollars are being spent. As you can see, the majority of those dollars are in instruction, because those grants are targeted for instructional purposes. Okay. And again, another level of reporting with salaries and benefits, and you can see the majority of our dollars are spent in salaries and benefits and materials and supplies. Some capital outlay. Like I said, we do not maintain a fund balance. The reason we do not maintain a fund balance is because these grants are, you've got to expend the funds first, spend it first before, so it's a reimbursement type process. So it's not money that I'm going to receive ahead of time. I have to spend the funds first and then request the dollars down to this district. Okay, now we're going to go into the CARES funding, which, again, is under the 4X, that's the federal funds, and I wanted you all to see, here are all the different grants that we received this year. I mean, over the last couple of years. It is a lot to oversee. And you can see, each of them had its own activity. So even though we received a lot of funds, some of them were actually targeted for a specific reason, and we needed to spend it in that manner. So, for instance, just as an example, ESSER 3, instructional materials, I couldn't spend it on salaries or supplies. I had to spend it specifically on purchasing instructional materials.
So it looks like more than half of those go away this year.
Yes. Like I said, all I'll have is really the ARP. All of the ARP funds will be available. But, you know, again, we pretty much have spent out a lot of it. So we really don't have a whole lot, and I'll tell you, between now and probably December, they will all be gone. All right, so again, I've tried to show you exactly how we're spending those dollars, and the majority of those funds are in instruction. It's going out to the schools, it's going out to the teachers, it's going out for instructional purposes. The grants that's showing up under facilities and acquisition, they are targeted specifically for that expenditure.
So we can't pay teachers with that.
Yeah. Keep going.
Dr. Legucco, this may be a question for our instructional department, but
Okay.
I'm looking at, the federal revenues that support, for example, the CARES Act has a line item for best high-quality curriculum for reading.
Right.
And I know what we're doing in the state of Florida is very different than what's happening at the national level as it comes to reading instruction. So I guess my question would be, are our hands tied by the federal government what kind of professional development we can pay for our teachers to have as it pertains to reading instruction? Is it in alignment?
No, it's a lot.
It's in alignment.
The training is in alignment with the state standard of the science of reading and not for EQE.
Also, keep in mind that those grants, they will all submitted as an application to the state, and the state reviews them to ensure that we are meeting the federal standards.
I guess I just have a little bit of PTSD
Uh-huh.
from when we had
Oh.
what was the federal grant that tied everybody to Common Core? Was it Race to the Top?
Oh, yes, yeah.
So when we signed on to receive those dollars, we
had
then,
to-
as a state, had to sign on
Yeah.
for the Common Core state standards, which,
No.
evolved into such a
Yeah.
political
No,
issue.
the CARES funding was primarily targeted so that the school districts can have the flexibility to apply for whatever we needed here at the district. So whatever we were doing, as long as it met the state standards.
Right.
So it was aligned with state standards, not with the federal. There was no restriction from the federal. Remember when those applications came out, there were about 10 opportunities on how we could spend those dollars.
Right.
And
I'm
it
all
says-
for getting whatever money is available to us, so long as the strings attached aren't dictating how we provide instruction.
I agree, any grant, we receive.
When it comes to federal and state dollars, that line through the dollar sign, that's a string.
It is.
There's always a string of some type.
Yeah, exactly,
Correct.
exactly. It's either matching or there's something else that you've got to do.
Can I ask a question about, on page 59, instruction? The tentative budget is 5% lower than is that something we took away from instruction? Like, why is the dollar value so much less?
We have lesser funds available. So, are you talking about the 13.4 versus the 10.2?
The 13 million versus the 10 million at 61%?
Right, yeah.
Versus 66%?
Well, yes, keep in mind that we're looking at the dollar value here. This is over, the percentage is based on the total value available versus here where we've got $20 million. No, the target still remains the same because it's the application. The application dictates what we were going to do with those funds. So regardless, we just spent, and again, this is the CARES funding, so it's already targeted and we already know how we were going to spend those dollars. It's just that we had a larger amount here to spend towards instruction versus what we have available to spend for instruction. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
We didn't actually put any more monies towards any other categories. It remained the same. Because if we did do that, we would have to go through an application and amendment process and send it to the state and ask them, hey, can we do this instead of this? And I know you're looking at probably the 7,400 where it shows that we're spending more here. What happened is at the very beginning of the year, again, it's the same concept where when we did receive these funds, they couldn't get materials. They couldn't spend the dollars that we targeted for specifically for construction and facilities. But as things started to loosen up, then I said aloud, but we provided the opportunity for them to start spending up their dollars. So now the idea is to try and get those projects completed. is the object codes, the way we're being, how we're spending those funds. And just like the federal grants, they're not allowed to keep a fund balance. It is drawn down, and once we expend it, that's when we're able to collect the funds. It's a reimbursement process. All right, so now we'll get into the internal funds. The internal funds are part of the general fund. So with that being said, we have two internal funds that we manage. It is not on the advertisement because it's part of the general fund already. So it's already reported in that ad. So, but I wanted you all to know how we are actually using those funds. This is our 7-Eleven. It's our liability program. And again, we cover, we pay for the property, automobile, workers' comp, assailant, student accident, cyber risk, storage tank. Those are the different types of insurance that we maintain. And so, just so you know. Again, this year, this just shows you how much we're spending, our revenues that we bring in to cover those expenditures. And this is just a breakdown of how we, what are some of those revenues that we bring in. Again, some of it charges for services for workers' comp. As you know, we do have a workers' comp program, and the revenue that we do generate comes in from part of our benefits. As you know, there's benefits, salaries and benefits. There's the FICA, Medicare, those types of federal income tax, and of course, there is also workers' comp. So that percentage is set at 1.43. So those dollars we transfer over to this account to cover some of our workers' comp claims. Then we have this particular, last year, we decided to go self-insured with our program. And of course, we started last year, when was it? It's half a year, right? Wasn't it? We started.
You mean we start October 1?
Yes, yes, October 1. But keep in mind, our program goes from October 1 to October 1. So it's 1 year. We have not really gone through a full year, a full cycle. So what you're seeing is actually 3/4 of that cycle. Okay, so let's continue on. So right now, and you'll only see this current year because again, it's not finished yet. So, but right now we've spent about, this is expenditures, we spent about $28 million. Well, actually 30 million. And next year we're projected to spend about $32 million. Keep going. This is where a lot of our dollars are being spent for that program. Purchase services, again, 32 million. That is where all our expenses are. It's where we pay for our, let me get to that, wrote it down somewhere. It's where we pay for our claims, our premium, excess insurance, all of those expenditures that is associated with this self-insurance program. And here it talks about our revenue, how much dollars we're bringing in. The revenue comes from, again, our health insurance, part of our benefits. Employee that the board contributes X amount of dollars. If it's a family, there's some extra costs that the family pays for. So those dollars that come in, we transfer it over to this as part of our revenue, as part of our operating costs. And then, of course, the appropriations or the expenditures are those where we pay for claims, those claims, health insurance claims, our premiums that's associated with the program. I believe right now we're with United Health. And and any other expenditures that go through that program. So right now, we are doing okay. We're hoping to end up on balance. We're about 9.7, so we're still able to maintain and pay our claims. So, all right.
What is your goal on that?
Well, and to be honest, we're hoping that the Bailey Group will give us some guidance on that. On my 7-Eleven fund, we have an actuary that is done to give us an idea of, okay, how much am I supposed to maintain in this fund to keep it solid, to keep it sound? We have not had that with Bailey Group because, again, this is our first year doing this. So I'm hoping that the Bailey Group can give me a target so that we can work towards. All right, we're at the end. Oh my gosh. All right, so really, the next steps really are for you to obtain board approval to advertise the proposed millage rates and the tentative budget for the 23-24 school year. This advertisement will appear in the Clay Today on July 27th, which is this Thursday. We're going to set the public hearing for August 1st, 2023 to adopt the millage rates and approve the tentative budget. And then we will also set the final public hearing date for September 14, 23 to adopt the final millage rate and the budget for 23-24. I got the date right. There you go.
There you go.
Thank you.
Have no more slides.
No more slides.
That's it?
Yeah, that's
All right, next on our agenda, we have the educational facilities plan.
Do we need to vote on that?
Not yet. I've got it on my agenda to review both, and then we'll have an action item.
Thanks.
Did you guys have a presentation for us?
No, we just have attached the plan. A lot of it's what Susan's already gone over.
Okay.
And their tentative numbers, so if you guys would like to look through it, we'll present it at the board meeting final.
Okay, sounds good. Any questions while we're on that item? All right, then we'll move forward to approve the advertisement for the 2023-2024 tentative budget and millages. Do I have a motion?
Michelle, or Miss Hanson.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yep, let's wait a minute. Moving towards the approval for the advertisement of the 2023-2024 tentative budget and millages. Do I have a motion?
I move approval to advertise the proposed millage rates and the tentative budget for 2023-2024.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, I have a second from Ms. Hanson. Any discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Give everybody a second to vote. All right. Next, we have presentations from the audience. I do have 2 cards. The first is Ron Pittman. The podium is fine, yes, sir. And normally we would have you state your name and address for the record. I know your address is exempt, so if you just state your name when you get to the podium. Thank you.
My name is Ron Pittman. My message today concerns the discussion at the June 29th school board meeting about restructuring our school police department. I was thankful that the discussion ended with talk about gathering facts and information, and we were requesting information from the sheriff. I would hope that all pertinent information would be asked of the sheriff. I understand that the sheriff was to be invited to provide information about restructuring. To whoever asks specific information of the sheriff, please consult with as many others as practical so that as many questions as possible can be answered. Would a committee be helpful? Would students, parents, and/or the community be helpful with their questions or concerns? What about the opinions of teachers, administrators, and support employees? Please consider obtaining their thoughts on the matter. Let's not forget about them when making such a major decision. Those folks are what we're made of. It was mentioned at the end of the June 29th board discussion that a workshop might be held specifically for discussing the matter. Will this be the case? If so, will you let those in attendance know before the end of this meeting today, along with the date and time, presuming that it will be here? It was requested at the June 29th board meeting that a vote to be restructured take place at the August 3rd board meeting. Will you confirm for those in attendance here today whether the vote is still planned for that meeting? If not, when does the board anticipate that that vote will take place? The Clay County District Schools is in the business of education and not law enforcement. However, in light of how things are in the world today, and specifically in consideration of the matter of continued school shootings, school districts have to work with law enforcement, like it or not. We cannot think for a second that we can wash our hands of law enforcement matters just because we give the responsibility to our sheriff's office. Unless we are micromanaging, we let the designated law enforcement official do their job, and we, or in this case, you, the district school board, continue about your business, which is education. But should any one of us, have a concern regarding school-related law enforcement, we contact a law enforcement official or the school and we request an explanation. If the situation appears to be in need of correction, we request that the matter be addressed and/or corrected. We have to ask that of whatever law enforcement agency we have. Again, if restructured, we couldn't just say, oh, the sheriff's office is handling our law enforcement, so now it's not our concern. If it involves the Clay County District Schools, it is still our concern. I want to remind you that should our school police department be restructured, the county sheriff has a lot of responsibility, and I do believe that they will not be personally running the department or the division that directly oversees our schools. They will appoint a manager for that. Whether we have a school police department or the sheriff's office, there will be matters of concern from time to time. This is a fact. We can't just allow ourselves to think a restructuring will solve all of our law enforcement problems. I would like to use an automobile to demonstrate a point. In this case, consider our current school police department and their sheriff's office as automobiles. Do you think the car with the sheriff's office emblem is never going to have a problem cranking up? Or that will never have a flat tire? Of course it will. No matter the police agency that we leave our school security to, there will be challenges, but we don't just trade in our car because of a flat tire. We don't just trade it in when the AC goes out. First off, we have to let someone know about the problem, let them know about our concerns, and give them a chance to explain what could be causing the problem. Communication is key here. As good managers, we know this, or we should know this. When we see a problem, we bring the problem to the appropriate person's attention, the problem is addressed, and then we all move on. Being fiscally responsible, we cannot just trade in our car because we're having trouble with our cruise control. Speaking of fiscal responsibility, we have, or we can get the cost of the car we have, everything about it. Those numbers are at our disposal. We just have to ask. We could not, should not even consider voting to restructure without knowing the full cost of the other car. In our case, we know the other car has a good reputation and will hopefully meet our needs. But we have to have more information than that before we can have a worthwhile discussion about it, much less take a vote on it. The homework needed to weigh out the advantages and disadvantages of keeping our current police department or restructuring is extensive. If we are going to consider restructuring, we have to make sure all the homework is done before we discuss or vote on the matter. Again, taking a vote without doing that is unconscionable. I firmly believe those thoughts will be shared by just about every person who has a stake in the matter. We owe that to the community, to our students, and to our employees, including the 40-some dedicated school district employees who make up our current school police department. Decency says we do that for them too. Just like all other law enforcement officers, they do their jobs day in and day out, not knowing what danger they may have to stare in the face that day. Our school resource officers have to live with the fact that they could be the first target, the first one hunted by an assailant, should their school be the next one. But they prepare and are prepared to face that danger as part of their job. Regarding their salary, they're worth every penny. If we compare their salaries to the salaries of sheriff's office deputies, our officers may make more money, but that would only be because those deputies are underpaid. Ask any of our local deputies or SROs, and they will all concur. I challenge you today, vote only to restructure our police department if and when you can do it with a clear conscience and are confident, after all considerations, that that is the right and best thing for our school district. We should not vote for the restructure if we are in doubt. If there are some things about our car that we don't believe are efficient or that are not in the best interest of our students or school district, we can't just trade it in without giving it a chance. Let's talk it through, get the matters addressed, and then we could all move on. Thank you for your time.
Next we have Tom, I'm sorry if I destroyed this last name, Flacco?
Flacco, yeah.
Flacco.
I read like a doctor, so.
And if you'll state your name and address for the record, thank you.
Thank you all for your time. I'm Tom Flacco. I'm one of the original school board employees here for the district. I actually moved my whole family away from family and friends from the Kissimmee area to come up here and work here, and we love it. It's the best job I've had. I'm gonna tell you that straight up. The staff and everybody I've worked for is incredible here compared to where I used to work. I'm speaking on behalf of the officers, okay? I'm not speaking on admin, I'm not speaking for anyone else. I'm speaking on 40-some plus officers that work for you, that have moved their families, that have taken these jobs when there's other jobs they could take, okay? We chose it to be in the schools. We chose this district. I wanted to address a few things that were said in the media and in the school board meeting. And I wanted to address those to calm some concerns, or maybe explain some concerns, okay, from a different standpoint. The first thing that I came across was Ms. Skipper's interview when she was talking, and she made a statement, we are in the business of education and not law enforcement. Unfortunately, they almost go hand in hand nowadays. Do you know that every school shooting, almost every school shooting, I think it's 98% the last time I checked, did not have an officer in the school? Nashville this year, Uvalde, Sandy Hook, did not have one. Now, some of them, like Stone and Douglas, had one and he didn't do his job, unfortunately. My point is that you can put anybody in the school, but you need dedicated people. There are over 18 school board police departments in the state of Florida, and they're growing because they work. Ask anyone that has it, okay? The other thing that she said, which kind of I thought was highly inflammatory and an insult to my profession and dedication and all the other 40-some people. She said that the way it's set up screams Parkland all over again. Now, everyone I've talked to, parents and staff, they thought it was highly inflammatory too. And I understand why she said it, because she has a feeling that there's something wrong with dispatch and the response time. In law enforcement, the average response time for a backup officer is 2 to 10 minutes, if that's good, to an incident. If you're at McRae Elementary or Keystone Heights or Shadowlawn, it's going to be 15 minutes. So the officers know that we're going to be in a gun battle by ourselves. So that 15 seconds it takes to go from Green Cove to Clay County is not going to make a difference when we respond. We're going to be there putting our lives on the line for those students and staff. Another thing that was brought up was, I don't think Well, I'll get to that, but I don't think you guys realize how lucky you are to have the officers you have here. Most of us have 20 to 30 years experience. Most deputies do not have that. We came here to work for a school district. We chose this job. Deputies, if they go to a school, I can tell you it's a stepping stone in their career. 3-4 years at the most. And then they go back to patrol, or they go to detective, or undercover. We're gonna be here for as long as you want us here, 10, 15 years, 20 years. The point is, we're dedicated to that school and to you guys. We're not gonna leave and go to be a detective. We've already done that. And along those lines, I think it was Ms. Hanson that said, we don't have specialized departments for sex crimes, which we don't, and I agree with you. But under that same assumption, we have officers that have 20, 30 years experience and have been detectives. Myself, I was a detective for 4 years. I did everything from thefts to robberies to sexual assaults to murders. Then I worked on a DEA task force for 3 years with U.S. attorneys doing narcotic racketeering cases. Then I also worked on Homeland Security task force doing human trafficking cases. So an investigation is not a problem. And let's bring up the sexual assault one you brought up. That was a good example. It's the same procedure whether it's a deputy or an officer. I think what Ms. Skipper said about the interview is a concern. The problem is the procedure, no matter who's in that school, will be you separate the victim and the suspect. You call your supervisor. The supervisor calls a detective. The detective comes down and does the interview. All we do is a report, right? But if we have other cases in the school, like employee theft, like battery on a school personnel, we do the charges, we do the report. We're all highly trained in that. You have guys not only that are SWAT officers, tactical trained, and have been active shooter trained since Columbine. Every year we go through active shooter training since Columbine. Is that what a 6-year officer deputy does? No. Columbine was a long time ago. So the one thing I want to wrap it up with is this is a big decision, not only for you guys, but for the children, for the parents, for the community. I ask you, have you asked your administrators about us? Have you gotten any feedback, good or bad? If you have, great. How about your parents and parent organizations? Because the PFE at my school has no idea you made this motion. The staff members at my school have no idea this motion was made. Have you gone to a school and spent a couple hours with an SRO? Have you spent 2 hours in the cafeteria with me and see the rapport I have with those kids? Do you know what programs I do, or that any of my other officers do? Do you know my Student of the Month program? Do you know my cyberbullying program that goes from 5th grade all the way to high school? All I ask is that if you make this decision, before you make your such a big decision, you spend time with the parents, students, staff, admin. I already know there's admin and staff that don't like us and didn't want us when I came up here. It's a political mess. Because some people like us and some don't, and I understand that. My point being is, let's, like Mr. Pittman said, let's get all the facts. If you guys still sway to go back to Michelle Cook, that's fine. Other question is, how's Michelle Cook going to staff 40 schools when she's already 20-some people down? If you put it, what are you going to do? Put a guardian or a safety officer in an elementary school who has no law enforcement experience? I just mentioned 3 elementary schools that had shootings. But they didn't have a law enforcement officer. So you're going to put one in those schools? As a parent, how would you feel? That marked unit out front is amazing. Such a deterrent. Such a deterrent. How many school shootings have been where there was a marked unit out front? Hardly any. Stoneman Douglas, the only one I could think of. To wrap it up this is a life-changing decision, not only for you, for the community, for the teachers and the staff and the students and the admin. It's a life-changing decision that you are making for 40-some families. Because we all have mortgages. We all have bills like you. We all have children like you. And the funny thing is, kind of irony, I voted for every one of you. And now you may put me out of a job. I think that's funny. But all I did was move here to work for you and be dedicated for you and your students. This is very near and dear to me, and I understand you have a job to do. I understand it's a financial decision. But if it's not financial and it's personal between somebody here and say upper echelon, that can be fixed. There's also mentioned accreditation. Valid point, very valid point. Accreditation can be fixed. You can work on that right now. My last department, I was on the board for accreditation. Special units, maybe get another detective. Maybe send more of the officers that don't have that training to schools. There's ways to fix this without having to jump ship and go back to a sheriff's department that's understaffed and doesn't really want it. And if she does want it, then she's lying to some people. But that's her decision. It's all politics. I don't get involved in that. I just tell you what we care about as officers, okay? We care about our students and we care about this community. And your decision is going to affect our lives. Thank you.
At this time, we'll move to the superintendent's comments.
I have no comments.
Mr. Bickner, anything from you?
Nothing good.
School board members, anybody want to start?
I'd be happy to.
Okay.
Maybe I should or shouldn't say this, but I would also like to call members of the SROs. We don't know how this is going to fall out. We haven't even begun to have a discussion. But I can guarantee you, after talking to the sheriff, because I did take the time to call her, and I would hope all of you would call her, she doesn't have 50 people sitting outside her door. The plan would be the same SROs would remain. If the school loves you, why not? If you're trained, why not? So I think we need to all calm down and let's just go through the process, answer all the questions, take the time and not come to conclusions we don't know about yet. Because we do care, and I don't think there's a school board member here that would want your job. We know how tough it is. So we appreciate you more than you know. So thank you.
I can go. As for the comments, I appreciate the candid conversation from your end. My husband was a police officer. As for talking to people, I spent 20 years in a classroom here. I actually just left a year ago, January. Family members work at schools. I've worked with SROs. There will be no decision on my part that will be done in haste or without, I guarantee, tons of research. Never once in a conversation did I hear a board member say they wanted to get rid of you. That is not the conversation that's happening here. Matter of fact, if anything does happen, I don't know how we got to the point that everyone thought they were going to lose their job. Because what we're talking about was putting under a different directive. It wasn't about losing jobs or firing people. At least for me, I can speak for me. And I have done a ton of research, a whole notebook full of research. So I guarantee you, I will not make any decision in haste. I do want to, I want to talk about, I got an email this week from a lady who had done some service for us, a couple years with the service for us. And as my husband says, and this goes to pretty much everything that we've talked about and all the different divisions that are in this room, good units do simple things well. Good units do simple things well. It kind of fires me up a little bit because it is the simple things that build rapport among people. It's the simple things that help communication go forward. It is the simple things done well that look out for the best interest of every single person in an educational community. I got a letter from this lady who said she showed up to a meeting and was told her services were no longer needed. Without a thank you, without a letter, or a thank you note, she was just kind of like cast aside. As a new school board member, I did not know that that is the way that would be handled. As an officer's wife, as a teacher dedicated to others, I take, I guess you want to say, service you give to others very seriously. I revere that. I have been about selfless service my entire life. However, good units do simple things right. So we have a volunteer for 2 years who helped us, and it ended on that note is not good for me in any way, shape, or form. I did not know that I should have handled myself differently. I don't have that information to do so. But that is where the breakdown starts between school board, the county office, constituents, is when we do not do simple things well and give people the ability to say, look, I told you so. We need to consider people before everything else. A couple weeks ago, I meant to mention this at the last school board meeting, I got a phone call from somebody at the county office. I listened to the person talk for about 18 minutes and then decided to start asking some questions. I was told, in exact words, you think you know everything, you were never a principal, you never worked for the county office. But you know who I did work for? Students and the people of Clay County. It tells me a lot about attitude. Good units do simple things well. You know what I was? A teacher for 20 years. You know what I was? A vacant mom, because I spent every minute helping kids learn to read. And if this is the way we think of teachers, I hope we change our minds. Because that 20 years, coupled with 2 master's degrees and a whole lot of other outside training, led me to believe I know something. All of our different experiences sitting in this room should make us better. Simple things done well. And that's all I have to say.
Ms. Skipper, do you have anything you wanted to add?
I mean, I can follow that, that's fine. So, I don't mean to laugh because this is serious, but like Ms. Hanson and Ms. Clark has said, I believe, well, I know for a fact that there's been a lot of misinformation going around this county. A lot. A lot. And I've heard it. And I'm going to tell you this. Nobody wants to make you jobless. Nobody. I have several members of my family who are law enforcement. And just so we're clear, my own mother didn't even know that I was going to call for a motion for this. Just so we're clear, she's a teacher. I knocked thousands of doors. I have data to prove it when I campaigned. I had no idea that the constituents of Clay County wanted this. I spoke to several of our administrators and teachers. I even have emails in support of this after they saw last school board meeting. And I want to thank every last one who actually watched it and did not take secondhand information as facts. That's what I want to thank. Whoever has done that, thank you for that. Because you should always check and verify what people say. I could sit here all day and talk about the HR perspective and the nightmare that has in itself, but I feel like that could be a whole workshop. And our discussion last meeting was to have Sheriff Cook come in and present her side of things. And although we wanted it to happen before next meeting, so there could be a vote, that didn't align. So that would be up to the meetings that are happening with Mr. Broski, and I'm assuming Chief Wagner would be present. I don't want to speak for him. But I also want to make it abundantly clear to our citizens of Clay County, because some of the emails that I did receive, their only concern, because they didn't really have a dog in the fight either way, was that there would be an officer present. It's state law that an officer has to be at a school. So going around and telling people that an officer is not going to be there for your child is misinformation. When we sit here and talk about jobs and staffing, has a single one of you went and spoke to Sheriff Cook herself on staffing? It burns me up that people speak for other people. So I would encourage that all of you, each board member, go and speak to Sheriff Cook yourself. Ask her your questions. She has an open door. She will speak and relate any information that you want. And as far as the Parkland comment, it was delay in communication that happened. I know there is an individual who reached out to me that wanted to give me the ins and outs of law enforcement, stating that was not the case, but it actually was. So that's why that was stated. I'm trying to address some more things that were stated here. And the gentleman that had spoken earlier, you talked about fixing all the problems. Nobody is saying that we are going to fix all the problems. Nobody is saying that switching over to Clay County Sheriff's Department would be fixing all the problems. That is unrealistic. But I will tell you, it would fix a lot, especially from a mom and a board standpoint and viewpoint. But ultimately what I want to address is the misinformation that has been going around. It's unprofessional. It's disrespectful, some of the stuff that I've actually heard that was stated in open meetings. And I will tell you that if any of you have questions or concerns, you ask me personally. Each and every one of you. I would give you that same respect, and I hope you would give it to me. If you have a problem, if you have a concern, if you want to know where I stand on a matter, come ask me personally. I want you all to know that since I have hit those thousands of doors, I have done extensive research. I have asked questions. I have had meetings. I have talked to well, not each of you personally, but I have talked to several of you. That's why I'm kind of shocked that you actually stated that you are speaking for all officers, all 47 of you, because there are some that have went to HR about a lot of issues. So I will tell you this, and now I'm speaking to the board members. It is our job to make sure that our children are safe. And I don't know if we fully understand that, thinking that, I don't know how to put this, because God forbid somebody blow this up, but it is our job at the end of the day. If something catastrophic happens, you can look at me like I'm crazy all you want, Miss Bola, but
I'm
you
not
have said
looking
it.
at you like you're crazy.
You have
I'm
said it
listening.
yourself in our meetings, that God forbid something happens, they are not gonna go to anybody else other than us.
That is absolutely right.
Us. So, thinking about that moving forward is important, because that would be on our hands. And, like I said, I just completely disgusted with the misinformation that's being put out and professionalism. I ask that nobody take this personally, that it wasn't about feelings, and here we are. That's all I say.
Ms. Bullock?
I do have something to say. And this is a result of the last meeting, the last board meeting. When I left, I was approached by community members immediately upon leaving the doorway with concerns. And I'm just, your comment about professionalism truly triggered this, but it triggered it right after the meeting. I started writing a letter to you the next day. I had to put it down in paper because I was afraid that if I didn't, I would not be concise. So allow me to read this. Dear Mrs. Skipper, please consider this an attempt to bridge what I see as a communication gap. Mrs. Skipper, you've attended 9 school board meetings and numerous workshops. During your tenure, you've shown great need to bring a number of issues to the board, and I commend you for your enthusiasm. During our June 29th board meeting, you attempted to propose a vote on a topic that hadn't been discussed, had not been researched thoroughly, and was not appropriately vetted nor on the agenda. In an effort to provide guidance, you may refer to our school board policies. Specifically, and I took this straight out of the policy 1.02, parentheses E.4, close parentheses. No action shall be taken by the school board on any matter unless it is shown as an item on the corresponding meeting agenda or an amendment thereto in the backup material adequate for an informed decision is delivered to school board members at least 48 hours prior to the meeting at which the action is to be taken. This references Florida statute as well. This is law. And the reference is 1001.372, which also includes reference, after I read it again from our Florida statute book, it references notification to the public so that they're aware of what we're bringing up as well. As a group of 5, you are but one. And we each have the right to be educated on what is going to come before the board in a timely manner, with explicit backup so that we may be prepared to vote on decisions that affect our children. We are a board of 5. We have all been elected to our positions on the board. We are not in a competition. If given the opportunity, I would suspect we would have 5 different ideas as to what our job does and what our job includes. Bringing up a topic as far-reaching as our police department organization and management is not the same as figuring out when we'll have our next workshop. I strongly urge you to read the policies of the school board. And if you have questions once you've read the policies, you should ask them of the new school board attorney. In previous meetings, I've heard comments made about the old board versus the new board, the new members. The system is designed to change to accommodate voters' needs every 2 years. The decisions we as a school board have made have been deliberate, with much research, forethought, and discussion, and appropriate for that point of time. Next year, we'll get to be part of the old board. There's one other topic that has been weighing heavily on my heart, and in your description of the change of restructuring the police department, You alluded to the importance of the safety and security of our children. As a result of your comments the evening of June 29th, I am truly hoping that you have not jeopardized the safety and security of our children. We have a group of men and women who have committed themselves to our police force. They're experienced in a variety of different areas and they take their jobs seriously. I would encourage you to get to know some of them and be more present in our schools. Truly be more present in our schools. Get to know these people. Find out why these officers came to work with us, what their passions are, and most importantly, talk with the principals, custodians, and teachers, and learn about the relationships that they've built with the students. These people put their lives on the line for our children and staff daily. They're trained, they're prepared, and willing to die in their quest to keep our children and employees safe. Your reference to their contracts not being relevant showed little respect for the people you are supposed to help lead as a school board member. We didn't have the research behind us at the last meeting to even enter a discussion. I would like to commend each of the officers and guardians of our Clay County Schools Police Force. Thank you for coming today. Didn't know you were going to be here. For their sacrifices for our safety, and thank them for their outstanding service. At our last workshop, you had a list of questions for Chief Wagner regarding fights, alleged rapes, the number of guns and rifles we have, automobiles, citations, and shields. He answered these questions directly and followed up with further information in a shade meeting. That was not a discussion. That was not enough information for the board to take action. I would ask that in the future, before you present another initiative to the board, you do a little research on the topic, provide us with the backup needed, and engage us as a team in a discussion at a workshop so that we can make an educated decision that will benefit the entire district with clarity and data. What you did at the last meeting and in a few of our workshops are called gotcha moments. Speaking personally, when you bring up these topics beginning with "I want," or "we need to vote on this now," my first response is, who cares what you want? You provide no information on the topic introduced, nor do you provide any support as to why the topic would be in the best interest of our children. Having played sports in high school, I truly thought you understood the concept of team. We as a school board are a team. You're but one player. Please try to remember that as you bring forth your ideas in the future. I have a copy for you, and I've already given a copy to Ms. Nona. If you could pass this over, please.
Am I allowed to respond to that? If that was a direct letter to me. First of all, the vote that we were talking about, the motion, was because after old business, we were supposed to be able to bring up a matter. And it wasn't necessarily to vote right then, because I don't know if you listened at our previous workshop with our attorney, but I told Ms. Gilhousen that I was going to be very direct in what I asked, because it feels like when the board presents what they want, it's completely ignored and we move on. So I wanted to, and I stated it that night, I just wanted it on the books for a vote. Because what happens is we are completely ignored, we push several months down the road, and nothing gets brought to a vote.
Give me an example.
Okay, bathroom policy.
We voted on it.
Oh yeah, but it took like 3 or 4 months. That was presented in January and we didn't vote on it till when? May, June, whatever it was. That's the point I'm trying to say. the things that happen, it just keeps getting pushed back. Our attorney advertisement, dear God, don't even get me started on the attorney situations.
Excuse me.
It's over and over and over again
You
delayed.
brought it up in
Let
your
me finish, please,
discussion.
ma'am.
I would like to vote now.
Yeah, a vote
Correct me
to
if
put
I'm
a
wrong,
vote.
but that's exactly,
Yes,
I think
vote
we
to
should
put a
vote
vote
right
on
now.
there.
And we jumped on you.
I
and
never
said,
said, I
let's do
didn't,
that.
no, I did not say I think we should vote
We
right
can
now.
go back and see that.
We can, because I made it very specific that I wanted to put a vote on the books
Afterwards, correct, you did.
moving forward. And just so we are clear, the contracts, I even stated that evening, I didn't mean how that came out, because that's not what I meant when I said contracts. What I mean when contracts, we absorb them or buy them up, and or the, like Sheriff Cook would take them on, because it's gonna be like a year transfer. I said all of that, and to be a highly rated listener, I don't think you listened to that. You can go
Well,
back
I
and
heard
read
that directly, and
Yes.
at the point I thought, you are one person making that decision. There are 5 of
My
us that
thing
will be
was,
voting on it.
when we were talking about it, I said, that's not what I meant. What I meant was absorbed.
Correct. Yes,
And
I
then we
understand that, because
continued.
you weren't prepared to talk about that. You didn't get it.
Yes, I did. I was
I don't think
prepared.
you got it.
Yes, I did get it.
What do you
Because
mean you have
normally
to
when
do
a company
contracts?
takes
What do you mean you
over,
have to remember
Okay,
this?
okay.
when a company
Let's not
takes
get
over,
into
they
back and
absorb
forth.
contracts.
Not
Yes,
always,
they
Ms.
do.
sweetheart.
Lola,
No.
Ms. Lola, Ms. Gibber, go ahead and finish what you would like to say, and then Ms. Lola, if you'd like to respond, I'll give you an opportunity, okay? Go ahead.
None.
She's amazing, your train of thought. That, I mean, you're taking everything out of context, like people we know,
Madam
so.
Chair, I was wondering if I could just, I
Ms.
think
Gibber,
it'd be
would you like
helpful.
to let Ms. Hanson jump in? I don't wanna,
I mean, it's not gonna help anything. She heard what she wanted to hear. She already
No,
has her
I was just
mindset.
gonna say-
But here's another thing though too, you know, we wanna talk about things like this and what's important. You know, we vote on stuff without full information all the time. All the
I
time. I wanna say, well, not, I shouldn't say all the time, but, okay, this budget. You know, other counties have been talking about this budget for months with presentations. Am I wrong?
That's possible.
With departments, other departments presenting, it's not possible? It is possible.
Did you see that the budget process started in January?
Right, why are we, Ms. Hanson has asked for months to be meeting with us, Ms.
Actually, other
Bola.
counties have, it's
This is
pretty
true.
traditional to hold meetings for board members to discuss their concerns about the budget. I have
Yes.
called a few of my friends, we're all brand new, but I'll give you an example. In Polk County, they've had meetings for the last 2 months so that they could explain the process as it's going, and people can hear for the transparency. So I just wanted to say that, what I was trying to say earlier was, what I think would be helpful, especially when people have board member comments, we need to address the board. I think it's not helpful to alienate people and separate us by individual conversation. If we're supposed to act as a board, then we need to act as a board. And if we're having problems, maybe it's something we can bring up at our master board training to keep it outside of the boardroom. But I personally would like people to address us as a board and hold conversations as a board about a topic. And Ms. Skipper is obviously, her thought plan and her thoughts on the police force is much different than yours. And I think if we don't take that personal, maybe just take it as her, then we'd all be easier for us to communicate if we just think of ourselves as a board. That's all.
Correct, and that's, I mean, it's as though I can't have an opinion. I mean, I can't help how you feel, but, I mean, I'm just saying, Ms. Bola, you don't want to be attacked, but you attack constantly, so,
I attack constantly?
yes. With
I wasn't
your
aware of
verbiage.
that. Thank you for sharing that. Ms.
You're
Skipper.
welcome. You can have it sarcastically or not, but I'm just letting you know, that's how I feel.
Unfortunately.
Can we talk about it the next board?
I've read my letter. I've said exactly what I'd like to say.
okay.
And if you'd like to go back and refer to the video from that, and I say YouTube video from that particular meeting, feel welcome to.
Mr. Brodsky.
Yeah, just, you know, I don't know what to say after all that, to be honest. But here's really my perspective on it. If the board would like more topics, we could certainly do that. If that's a request of the board, more board workshop, budget meetings. I know today was riveting. We could do more of that, however long you'd like to do that. So we're all ears to that suggestion. You know, in regard to misinformation, I think there's a lot of misinformation that goes around. I see that all the time. And one of the things I'll just say personally as superintendent would be for board members to come and seek out the information, right? You can't know about a topic unless you come to the folks that actually participate and do the topic, whatever that topic might be. And so I think what happens is people get their information, but they get their information from other sources. So if you're talking about a district of 40,000 children, potentially 80,000 parents, and 5,000 employees, and your source of information is a small group of people that you associate with, you may not have the full picture on any topic. I'm not speaking about the police department, I'm speaking in general, right? And so you hear information, you hear about a person that might have a complaint about a teacher or administrator or support person or whatever. Really, it's important to provide context of the situation. So let's just take the case of a teacher and somebody says, oh, okay, the teacher acted improperly. Well, the teacher, the student has 6 different teachers they see in a day, and if you do the math, and that's like 43 million opportunities for something to go wrong. Right, 43 would be 40,000 times 6 times 180 days, it's 43 million. Why would you not think something would go wrong out of 43 million opportunities for it to go wrong? So if there's a complaint, in the case of police, about a police officer or whatnot, realize it's a very small percentage of the overall context. In regard to where we are, I feel obligated. I can't recall the speaker that asked the question, like really, like was wondering, are we like voting on it today? You know, was kind of the implication of the person. Let me just give you a quick status update. You know, since the board member brought it up on the 29th, you know, the sheriff, and in meeting with the sheriff would like more information. You know, that would make sense that before anybody would vote, that we would find the information first. That'll take a little bit of time. Believe it or not, protecting students is very complicated. It's governed by many statutes in which even Clay County Sheriff's Office would have to research and participate with. All of the folks that were involved in youth resource officing back in 1819 left the Sheriff's Office. They're currently employed by you. Okay, so now building up that knowledge base would be important, and determining capacity as well as cost related to this would take a little bit of time for the sheriff to get there. But I'm really surprised that the board doesn't want to ask any information related to the department that they have. I mean, ultimately, if the board's going to make a decision, they're going to have to make some sort of comparison.
Mr. Broski, I thought we were setting up a meeting so we could discuss a bunch of these topics.
But we haven't done that yet, because
But I mean, I thought that was the intent for us to talk about.
A workshop.
Right, there would have to be a workshop at some point. It would seem to me that the board would want to know about their current status.
Well, I thought that was what was gonna happen at the workshop, like she was gonna present her side and then we were gonna present
Yeah, we're
our
gonna
side.
talk about the status and,
Well, I think what would happen is that probably the smart move would want to be, what is our current status? How many officers do we have? What job responsibilities do they have? What is the cost of those folks? If you're going to make a comparison at some point, you should know what you have
well,
first.
I personally
before you
asked for
make a
that at
comparison.
the last meeting
So we can
for the cost
certainly-
comparisons.
Okay, we can certainly do that.
Mr. Rossi, I think the board, my understanding from our discussion was that, and I know from me and Ms. Bola, I was very specific, and I did speak with the sheriff, and I told her very directly, there's a lot of information that I need from her and from Chief Wagner and
Yeah.
the superintendent. I need to see, because that's how we made this decision originally, was we had a side-by-side comparison.
And I thought that's what we were gonna do with our
Correct.
special,
That was my
special
understanding,
meeting.
is that that's
Right.
what we
Is what
should
we all
expect to have at the
discussed
workshop.
and were contacted and told.
So would the board like some information about, until the
Yes.
sheriff gets ready for her part?
I would rather just do it the same day.
Yes, I
And
think you're
didn't we
gonna
discuss it would be a long transition? It's not
gonna
something
be
that
like a
would
year
happen
or
right
something.
this minute. We talked about it being a very complicated process and it would take time. And I think it's just better to start the process. And it's not that anybody's rushing to
So we've started the process then, I guess is what I would say.
the meeting.
The exchange of information has to occur first.
You guys have, yeah.
Before that, I mean, the statute clearly states it's, 1001.51 and 1006.12. Both of those kind of say that the negotiation of the contract is really the purview of the superintendent of schools, not the board. So I'll bring that information to the board
Yeah.
when the sheriff's prepared the information to do that.
And I would like Sheriff present with her team when we do our special workshop. So
Right.
that if we have direct questions, if something comes up, that we can ask her about.
Yes.
Are we okay? Do we have that understanding? That when we present both sides, that Sheriff Cook and her team.
It's a
Can I weigh in on this?
That's her.
Right, I know, but I'm just saying, like, as a board,
Yes. Yes.
May I ask a question, or may I just put it in perspective here? At the first I've heard of this, and I wasn't privy in any conversation prior to this, the first I heard of this was June 29th. And I refer to that gotcha. I was like, whoa, didn't know that this was coming up.
Ms. Fuller,
At the
that's
time-
first I heard of it too.
Okay, thank you. At the time, we also said, wait a second, within the last 2 meetings, we had just signed a contract with our police department for the next year. We have a contract with them for a year. It's my understanding, we want to review, and I believe Ms. Clark said this, and please correct me if I'm wrong. You said it would be good to, I want to say evaluate, I think is the word that you used, if I'm not mistaken. And it was something like that.
The whole point is that we
to-
would
to
get
look-
together,
to look at
get all the
everything.
information,
Right.
let's talk about it.
And-
Let's not jump to,
Conclusions, very
Yes.
good. And that's where I'm coming from as well. And what I'm hearing you say, Mr. Broski, is that we really need to know what we have right now. And truly, the statutes that are involved, because they have been multiplied from the very first time that we started with Marjorie Stoneman Douglas. They literally have been multiplied, and Doc Kemp had put together a presentation back when we made this initial decision. And it was something that compared and contrasted the current, what we had at that point with the sheriff's office, with the guardians, what the law was telling us we had to have, and the financial implications and the financial impact of all of it. And what was our best option financially as well. That's when, and this was 4 years ago, was when we decided to start our own police force. And it was more financial than anything, and yeah, there were a lot of concerns at that point. But I can't begin to tell you everything that we do now. I mean, I can sort of guess, I can, based on what I had back then, but I think it would be helpful for us to, like you said, get a picture of what we have now. If the sheriff would like to be present for that, that would be super. It's my understanding that Sheriff Cook needs like at least a month, maybe 2 months, to bring up all of the information that she needs to be able to conceive if that's a possibility, if that's my understanding. And so before that month or 2 months is up, why can't we sit down and say, okay, this is what we have right now. This is what it costs. This is why it costs this. This was and we projected out for 3 years, if I'm not mistaken, at that time.
The initial start.
The initial
capital
starting
year and the
cost,
second
it
year.
was the first year, the second year, and I couldn't remember if there was a third, okay. And find out, what are we paying, what are we doing right now? Because I can't make any recommendations until I've understood what we have.
All we're saying is
And,
we just don't want to
excuse me,
present it twice.
and then, but I want to then, yes, bring the sheriff in, if the sheriff is interested, oh my gosh, yes. And have her say, okay, this is what it's going to cost for us to run this program. Because it's not simple,
And
it's not as
only
simple.
do I want to know what it would cost, I want to know what the changes would be
Oh,
to the
totally,
program.
totally. Because
So,
at the time, there were
reporting
questions
and-
that we
yeah,
had
correct.
regarding the coverage of our students versus the bank robbery that was going on down the street sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And there were answers that didn't settle. And we're talking different sheriff, we're talking different situation.
But that is an
Yeah.
element to keep in mind as well, that your sheriff is elected, and that can change, and when you have
Very
leadership
much so.
changes, you have program changes, and that becomes outside of your control when you're, which, I mean, granted, contracts can end as well, so you contract while it works, and then I guess you figure out something different if it eventually doesn't work, but all of these pieces of information are vitally important to such an important decision.
Mhm.
And I think we're all on the same agreement that we want all the information about the current police department next to the information that the sheriff has in their proposal.
And I guess my question is, do we want to wait for the sheriff to be able to present that? Which is going to be, and Ms. Skipper, you were the one who said we always push things back, but we're in a situation now where the sheriff can't give us that information.
We could have a
right now.
workshop, talk about it. I would like to see the options as well. So maybe we need to give Sheriff Cook some time. But we could have a workshop where we do this exploratory, I guess I can call it exploratory, where we can learn all the information we want about the Clay County School Board Police, and then have Sheriff Cook come in. She wouldn't have to sit here through all that. Have her come in maybe at the back half, much like we did interviews with our lawyers in a special meeting. And then she could make a presentation,
I mean, I see the benefit to that. My concern, I look at this as almost like when you're contracting out through an RFP. Do you want to give the competitor the advantage of seeing the original presentation before they make their presentation?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Well, it makes sense, but we have them. I actually know a lot about our Clay County School Board Police, more than people think I do.
I would prefer that we bring
Together.
both to the same meeting and look at, this is what Sheriff Cook's vision is, and this is what the current police is doing. I think that's the fairest way.
I mean, I'm okay with either, I'm okay with whatever, as long as we get the discussion going and we have all the assets we need to make an informed decision.
So it would be, we'd put that workshop off then for another month and a half.
Well, do you guys agree with that? That's just my opinion. I feel like it's most fair if they.
I kind of thought that's what we were going to do.
That's what I thought.
That's right. I think we could set it over again.
Well, there was discussion about, do we have our police department do the presentation first? And
Well,
I
the
say
other
no.
side of it is pushing it down the road.
I wasn't even looking at the presentation.
No, my thing is I don't want to have to have it twice, is what I'm saying, so you do it together.
Well, if she's here at the same time, there is an advantage, as Ms. Gilhousen said, because if she hears something, she could say, no, maybe this is what we could do for you. Like, she could give us a viewpoint which I'm not familiar with at this time, because I have no idea how it would happen. I think it's a good idea, more like that. And then, Mr. Brodsky, you say, no, we do this, I think it's helpful to have you and her in the same room at the same time with us.
I was only suggesting that there's basic information that the board that doesn't know right now.
That's where I was coming from.
That was my only suggestion, so I'm good either way.
Is there anything further? I'm not going to add anything to the discussion.
So if I could, before you dismiss, maybe we let Mr. Douglas speak.
Yes.
He sat through all of this, so he's passed his first test.
I really have nothing to say other than thank you. We look forward to joining the team and contributing to the different questions that you all have and the research and the constant changes in the legislature and other places. And Jeremiah was unable to be here, but he will be the main point of contact for the board. Mr. Jeremiah Blocker, former
County Commissioner in St. Johns County, a lot of experience with original law. And also J.P. Steinmetz, a local Clay County product of the school system here. And then Attorney Carol Simpson as well. That will be rounding out our legal team. We look forward to jumping right in.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Can we maybe get a 10-minute break before the?
Yes, I'm going to go ahead and adjourn the special meeting, and then we'll reconvene in 10 minutes for our workshop. This meeting's adjourned.
Your copy.
We just, they handed us the budget, and I said, okay.